Welcome to the Campfire Curmudgeon Podcast. My name is Nicholas Edward Jones, and joining me is my co-host,
Hi.
Heidi. And joining us again from the Half Astral episode is Christopher Smith.
Hello.
And Heidi's phone just buzzed.
I was turning it off because you didn't tell me we were starting the podcast. Jeepers Creepers.
Okay, so first off, something I just want to say. I know what a fucking cat looks like. It was not a cat with mange. It was a humanoid creature.
Mange.
Oh, he listened to our podcast.
Yeah. I listened to last week's podcast, and you read my story, and you dismissed it as I saw a cat with mange.
This is why you don't have the guest on
gotten
right
into the
after
air
you
duct.
read their story while they're not here and can't defend themselves, and then have them on the
It was
next
not.
episode.
It was not a cat with mange.
I'd fire the booking agent, but the booking agent is me.
You fucked up.
I fucked up. So, I'm sorry, the cat had mange and what else? I'm sorry, I totally...
No,
That's
it
what
was
we
not.
decided
You
about
decided that on the episode that
with
what I
the-
saw was a cat with mange
in
that
the
had somehow
thing.
gotten into the air ducts.
With the air duct.
It was not a cat. I know what a cat looks like.
It was John McClane.
It was not John McClane. It was something. If combine a cat with mange with John McClane, and what you
John
get in between.
McClane.
Oh, I was going to
Oh,
say
there we
Cat
go.
McClane. But all
Yes,
right.
but no, it was humanoid. It was much larger than a cat. It was smaller than a normal human, but larger than a cat.
It was a really angry.
Now I
hairless
have
cat.
5 claws. Ho, ho, ho.
A child with mange, maybe, but not a cat with mange.
Ew.
Okay.
I'm upset.
So just had to get that out of the way.
So today, Heidi, I'm going to let you lead this intro.
Okay, here's my intro.
The reason Chris is joining us is because Chris wants to talk to us about Beyonce?
The Illuminati.
The Illuminati.
They're one and the same. Maybe.
Maybe.
Probably
Yeah.
not.
He's going to explain, though.
All right.
Yeah.
Chris, the floor is yours.
Okay, where to begin? We could begin with the ancient mystery schools or
Christianity.
Christianity,
What's right there?
Scientology.
The Templars.
But
That was a big thing.
This
that
is
was a big thing in the 2000s, remember?
No,
When,
yeah,
like,
the Templars.
Da
When
Vinci
everybody
shows
was
came out.
obsessed with that, yes.
And they were like, hey, there's the Masons and the Templars and the...
And they're
like,
at war
yeah.
with each other because they're both trying to find the Holy Grail.
And then Assassin's Creed came out, and then, like, Michael Fassbender is a member of the Secret Society.
Oh yeah, that movie happened.
Yeah, it
I
did.
forgot about that.
Should we even watch that?
I don't even
I
know
don't.
which one came out.
I never played the game, and they made a movie of
course.
Assassin's
They
Creed,
made a
which
movie of Assassin's Creed?
yeah,
Yes.
it
I
was
mean,
a
it was a
huge,
great
big.
game.
Starring
but-
Michael Fassbender.
It was a
Why
huge,
don't
big
I
budget
remember
movie
this?
because no one gave a shit about it.
It came out
sucked.
last
The games
Christmas.
are fantastic, and I don't
They're
remember
okay.
anything. I think they're
The games
fun.
are great until you get to a follow mission where it's like, you're too far away, you're too close, you're too far away, you're too close,
That's
you
when
failed
you
the
hand
mission.
it to somebody else and go, I'm gonna get a beer. Finish this for me. I'll be right back when you're done. That's how I play
The
games.
grappling
Is
and
that not how you're
the
supposed to do it?
parkour and the like fight parts of the games
fun.
are amazing.
I just like games where like I'm just gonna run around.
Yeah.
And it's
When you
one of
play
those
as
games.
Ezio, and he's a stereotypical Italian for a full 3 series of games, and you're just like, yeah, I'm just gonna like wrist knife everyone in the goddamn throat, and then
He's just jumping
and
into
then-
pipes and
and then
punching
the-
mushrooms and.
And then there's a subplot with the Pope and the Vatican, and you're just like, fuck yeah, like that. Those games were fun. Also, the Pirates, or what is it, Black Flag,
Yeah.
where you get to play like
One of the newer ones.
You get to simulate pirate like pirate ship combat.
Okay, I was like
Um,
simulated pirate. What now?
Pirate ship combat. Not necessarily like you avoid the whole slave trading thing that was also
pretend that
happening
didn't happen.
Raping and
simultaneously.
pillaging and-
Yeah, but
the fun part of
yeah.
piracy.
Well,
He just tricked you into saying yes.
The greedy evil part of like the power dynamic.
Remember, I saw when the Pirates movies were huge. I saw this History Channel
Shut up
documentary
and
about
tell me
pirates.
about Britney Spears.
Okay. Anyway, just so I can finish that thought, since I started it and people are now on the edge of their seat.
Okay.
I saw this History Channel documentary about
Let
No,
them
they're
pirates.
like, they're like
Let
Nick, you're an
them
asshole.
wonder.
Like, you gotta,
Well, they
let
already
you guys
think
talk.
that about you. I
I
mean,
know.
if
They were
we're
trying to
being
like find something good about pirates because people were like, "Yay, pirates!" because of the stupid Johnny Depp movies.
Mm-hmm.
But there's
I
nothing really
have
good
heard
about
about
pirates,
that.
and so they were like, "Oh, they were actually kind of racially integrated."
Yay!
And then rape.
I mean, because of like basically when you get down to peasantry and people have been
Right, yeah.
cast out of society, it's like, well, at that point it becomes kind of this is our mission, and it's a meritocracy for who can help you best, like, join the team to accomplish that mission. It doesn't matter if you're like, well, I'm a white man who can't swing a sword, but I'm also like, and I'm a Haitian or a I'm a Puerto Rican descent, and I'm totally like cast out of society. But I can swing a sword, and I can help you pillage, and I can load a musket, and I can batten down the hatches and trim the jib sails. I like the cut of this guy's jib. Anyway, what does this have to do with the Illuminati?
What's a jib?
The jib is the front sail.
I really just wanted to
like
eat it.
there's the main sail that's in the main mast on a ship, but the jib sail goes from the top of the mast to the bow of the ship, and the jib sail is when you unfurl it. It helps you gain more speed.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Professor Sailing. Okay,
We're later going to get on the topic of child sex rings, so we just opened this podcast with 8 minutes about pirates.
We interviewed Cheryl Jones from Movies Made Me, and she has a graduate degree in maritime and piracy.
Yes.
Okay, then yes, pirates.
And her favorite movie, the movie that made her go back to grad school and study this, was
Cutthroat Island.
was the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, which is actually a quality movie.
It's one of my grandpa's favorite movies.
It's a fun spectacle adventure. It's fear and loathing in
the ocean.
It's fear and loathing in the Caribbean. This
isn't your time. You had your time. This is Chris's time.
I'm just saying, she's going to listen to this and be like, you motherfuckers interrupted Nick when he was talking about what a jib sail is.
So much, blah, blah, blah.
I will take a back seat.
Anyway, the Illuminati.
Illuminati.
Specifically what we'll be talking about is the Illuminati and Hollywood and the media. Movies, music industry, how a satanic elite controls the entire media through MK Ultra, Project Monarch brainwashing,
mind control,
and exploitation. So I've been doing a lot of research on this, which is not healthy, because I've been up very late drinking and watching YouTube videos for hours. And as ridiculous as some of this stuff is
it just like last night or tonight, or has it been weeks?
It's been a couple of weeks because I thought we were going to record this episode earlier,
I just want to give
that's your guys' fault,
Nick's
basically. Because I suggested this episode a couple of weeks ago, and that would be great, and then weeks went by, and I was like, I'm going to research this, and then so that's been my life for the past couple of weeks. So I'm doing pretty well psychologically. But and the interesting thing about it is, there's a lot of bullshit in this, but there's elements of truth as well.
There's a lot in there that you have to stop for a second. You're like, wait a second, that makes sense actually.
Although the later it gets, and the more you've drank, and the more videos you've watched, the more all of it starts to make sense, which isn't good. But
I have coffee in the left hand and a Moscow Mueller in the right hand. So
I'm sure the first Moscow Mule.
No, the third of the night.
Okay. But and we've seen in the past few weeks just what's happening in Hollywood with all of the Harvey Weinstein and just all of this, which has been an open secret in Hollywood for a long time.
Ripping off the edifice of everything nice and cool and hey, here's the system, and all of a sudden the edifice is being ripped off of the monster harassment and misogyny within the system,
which has been part of the system since the very, very beginning, and not just. A lot of it gets focused on Hollywood right now, but this happens in everything in politics. We hearing about that too now.
Every type of
in big business,
institutional structure that exists that's either revered or kept from criticism, right? Or just excluded from the eye or the overall view of scrutiny. We'll call it that, because scrutiny is fair. Right?
And just in any industry, wealth and powerful people are going to exploit weaker people, especially women and children, and men as well, because they can. And that's...
Because they can.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think we focus...
Call back to Moulin Rouge. From 2001.
Starring Nicole Kidman, whose father...
Here we go.
Okay.
And Ewan McGregor, who played the priest and the pope of Angels and Demons.
Oh, did he? I didn't see that one.
Who used the Illuminati as a false villain to usurp power and take over the Vatican.
Spoilers for Angels and Demons.
Oh my God, from 2006.
If you haven't seen it yet, I don't care.
Yeah.
Yes, but Nicole Kidman's father was a huge, very prominent psychologist in Australia had to flee Australia to, I believe, Thailand or somewhere in the Southeast Asia, where he died under mysterious circumstances. Rumor is he was running a child sex ring.
See, I don't know. Like, here's the thing: knowing zero.
Allegedly,
facts,
okay. So everything I'm going to say tonight.
Don't sue us.
Before,
all the opinions of the guests are not necessarily.
Allegedly.
Opinions of our guests are not necessarily the opinions of Campfire Curmudgeon, and we can't be held responsible.
That should be the title of this episode. Just allegedly.
Allegedly.
But here's the other part of like, oh, Nicole Kidman. What? Okay, aside from the surreptitious alluded to existence of the Illuminati, who may or may not exist, what other secret, litigious, powerful society, religious movement has she been exposed to?
Especially involved with Hollywood.
And it's like, oh, her dad was a psychiatrist? Is there a specific movement that calls itself a religion that is in direct opposition to all things modern psychiatry?
What would that be?
I don't know. You'd have to ask
Tom Cruise,
Sea Org,
John Travolta.
Yes. Anyway,
so they always have like the best
allegedly.
buildings.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
They always have the best buildings, but they're so super weird about you being near their buildings. If you've ever walked past any of them, in New York and LA.
In college, I used to hang out on Hollywood Boulevard. They have several buildings there. I was a regular
across
the testing centers
and forth.
They have there's this beautiful old hotel from like the 30s, right next to the Egyptian theater where I used to go like almost every weekend. And yeah, it's a place where like we joked that we were going to join the church just so we can live there because it's such a nice building.
You even walk past us. There's one in New York. It's beautiful. And my friend and I were like, maybe we'll take a picture. And her dad was with us. He was like, watch what happens if you try. Sure enough, like you stand across the street for too long. Security like comes out and starts like eyeballing you and like being
making
tough,
their presence known,
make
allegedly.
Faces at you, allegedly. And we were like, okay, let's not take a picture. Let's walk away quickly. This is weird.
If you want to die of alcohol poisoning, make this a drinking game. How many times we say allegedly? Do a shot.
Allegedly, do the shot.
You'll be dead in 5 minutes.
Yeah, we're not going to do it, but you can do it listening.
I don't know. We might do it. That might be a better show.
We might do it.
Okay.
Okay, but there's a place to start with.
But the Illuminati.
Allegedly.
Okay, something to start with. So the Illuminati, for
do they have
anyone
any connection to the Masons?
Some people believe so. Some people believe the Masons are the public face of the Illuminati.
Okay, so what is the Masonic Temple?
The Masonic Temple is a secret society, even though we know basically everything about it. All the information is out there. It's a fraternity of mostly white men, according to some conspiracy theorists, and a lot of the conspiracy theorists are very anti-Semitic, which is just unavoidable. And again, I'm not espousing any of these ideas. We're just examining the phenomena of them existing.
We're acknowledging them.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that
this thing happened.
Yeah. So some of the more especially racist and anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists believe it's a Jewish cult, even though most of them tend to be very Protestant white male.
Right.
And
my paternal grandfather's paternal grandfather reached a level of like the Masonic ranking because they have this they have weird titles the way that like all secret societies have weird titles.
And you rise up the ranks.
And he wasn't like a racist. He wasn't like he might have been racist.
Spoiler, he might have been.
But here's the thing. Like his name was Joshua Jones.
Definitely racist.
And let me finish.
Judgy McJudge your pants.
Here's the thing. He reached one of the highest level of the Masonic Temple of like titles that you could attain. We don't know whether he was Catholic. I know that my paternal grandfather was
Catholic. You can't be Catholic and be a Mason.
I don't know. We don't know what happened with that. But I do know that he was the member of my family, of my father's side, my grandfather's grandfather, who fought in the Civil War under Sherman and helped burn the South down. He was he was injured in the he was wounded in the Battle of Resaca, which is in Georgia. So
a lot
basically,
of people that are involved in government or military, they're Masons.
Right. So he was a Union soldier fighting against the Confederacy. So I think that, like, even if he was racist, which might have been kind of the hey, guess what? Somebody in the 1800s was racist. Go figure. He was at least fighting on the right side of, like, liberation. He helped Sherman burn the South down. Yay for my ancestry. But he was a Mason, and who knows if he was anti-Semitic, probably.
You can't, the thing with, like, Catholics is, like, you can't be a Mason, because they have the other thing, the Knights of Columbus.
No. The Knights of Columbus.
Have you not heard the conspiracy with that?
I don't know how it originated, but as far as I know right now, my father's a Knights of Columbus, and as far as I know right now, the only thing they care about is watching boring movies on like a Tuesday night and crusading in the name of getting abortion made illegal.
Yes, they also believe that the Masons are, like, out to get them. You've not heard that?
That's probably an offshoot of, like, oh, well, the Knights of Columbus, they're same thing. Like, we took our name from the Templars.
The Knights of Columbus believe that they are out to get them, and that there's, like, they've got their names in a hat to, like, come after them.
They probably took their name from, like, internecine fighting in the Crusades and the Templars, right?
No.
So it's like, oh, there's the Protestants, and, like, oh, well, whatever the Masons happened, did the Masons happen after Martin Luther nailed his, like, bitch list to a church door?
All I know is they think
the Masons have their lineage back to ancient Egypt. Actually.
Okay. So yeah,
it's the Temple of Solomon and
pre-Protestant,
Israel. And, yes, it's pre all of that.
Yeah. So
like the actual Masonic,
not even Christian, like
the actual why they're Masons.
Let me pull out my dollar bill and see what's because we're doing the Illuminati episode, right?
But the actual Masons, why they're called the Masons, and their uniform kind of is the sort of robe sort of thing,
right.
And the trowel is their kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That is very symbolic for them. Is apparently the Masons, their origin is they built the Temple of Solomon, and because of that they were privy to a bunch of secrets, and then just formed this fraternity of Masons, this guild, and then that formed into this society that has been controlling Western civilization for centuries and maybe a whole millennia. However long the Temple of Solomon was, I don't know.
Right. So if you pull out your dollar bill,
everybody pull out your dollar bills,
and you look at the back of the dollar bill, it says "Annuit Keptis" over the on the left side of the back of the dollar bill.
That wrong.
Annuit.
I'm just being an asshole.
Keptis, and that means something yearly. But there's the image of the pyramid with the great eye overseeing
the all-seeing
all.
eye,
Yeah. And it says Novus Ordo Seclorum, and it means that the all-seeing eye, like it says underneath that in English, the Great Seal, and it means basically the all-seeing eye is the representation of a singular God, and it says he favors our undertaking. He like, this is what we do here. He favors what the...
Why don't they just say that? This is what we do here.
Because...
That's
it
so much
doesn't
easier.
look as cool.
Right.
Also, if you fold the dollar bill a certain way, apparently there's like the Twin Towers on fire.
Okay, but
and
that's some like 9/11 like.
No,
that's involved. That's involved in this too.
There's other stuff too. Like you can fold it all different ways, and it shows you all sorts of different stuff. And there's this,
Mickey Mouse that's involved.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if that's one, but probably if you're good enough at folding, you can make it happen.
Jump in, get us in here.
Well, you guys keep sidetracking me.
No,
all right, specifically, we're going to focus on.
Nicholas keeps sidetracking you. I'm not sober enough.
Okay, so we can start with, let's just start with the big names, like Beyonce, Katy Perry, Britney Spears, are basically, Satan. Let's start with Satan.
Let me issue a correction, because just really quick.
Here we go.
More
pirate shit.
Annuit Keptis, the classical Latin, is one of two, this is according to Wikipedia, is one of two mottos on the reverse side of the Great Seal of the United States. The second motto is the Novus Ordo Seclorum. Another motto appears on the front side, E Pluribus Unum. Everybody knows E Pluribus Unum.
That one.
Yeah.
From many, we are one. Taken from Latin
New
words,
World Order.
Annuo, third person singular present or perfect annuit, to nod or to approve. So it's not yearly or annually, but to approve, and coeptum, is commencement, undertaking. It means, literally translated, he favors our undertakings.
So I was going to talk about blood sacrifices, but
Go
we're out of
for
time.
it.
So
No, right? Seriously. Jump in, talk over him. That's what I do.
okay, Satan, the Illuminati. They control Hollywood. They control the media because they know the power of movies, the power the media has over our minds. So they control it. And
So why are they controlling the movies? What's the point?
because they're Satanists.
But what's the point? They want more? They want people to join? They're trying to influence you?
They want to
Does
cause
this go back
suffering.
To mind control?
They want to cause suffering in the world because that is what powers them.
Okay. Jump in.
Because they're Satanists. Okay, let's start with. There's so many angles to jump
And
in
when you
on.
say Satanist, are you talking Church of Satan Satanists?
No, I'm not talking
Right,
LaVey
Here
and
we go.
Satanists.
I was like,
Yeah.
you got to be specific here, so we're not
These
talking
are
LaVey,
these are
we're
the real
talking-
thing, devil
Because
worshippers that
because
get power.
Because it's not like it's like, oh, we're in the Church of Harry Potter, and these are people like that are
Yeah.
Hold up.
that are in the like, hey, we're the Church of the He Who Shall Not Be Named.
These are the eyes wide shut people.
Okay,
Those kind of Satanists.
so it's
There you
not
go.
necessarily people who believe in Lucifer and actual like the devil
No.
worshiper.
But they perform rituals because it gives them a certain power.
Sure.
And because they know these rituals in these secret elite meetings,
This
they
is
have the
opposite
secret
of
society
good,
that controls.
opposite of- yeah, there you go.
And their most powerful tool is the media because it reaches so many people. It shapes our minds. I mean, now growing up, we're beyond the generation that was raised by TV and raised by movies, and it's the most powerful form of, in their mind, magic that exists.
And so you're saying that the whole reason that they're doing this is to influence us, our generation?
Every generation.
Every
Well,
generation.
It's
But
just
they-
in
Or are you
modern
saying they
times, this is the
started with
form.
us?
You
Is that what
can't
you're
deny
saying?
that it is not influential, right?
No, absolutely,
Culture.
yeah.
Yeah. So basically, their method of warfare is cultural and
Yes.
of the mind.
Yes.
Okay.
And then in some cases, the way to control that is literally controlling the mind. In a broader sense of the viewers, of the spectators of the media, but also the people involved in the media, who are the most famous people in the world. They're not, politicians or world leaders or business people. They're movie stars and they're pop stars. And so these figures are created by this group and controlled by this group and shaped into things that can be controlled by them to control us.
So let's start with Britney Spears on this. And so with this particular individual, are you saying that they're a part of this, like they know about this, or is this something that is being also done to them?
A little bit of both. They're mostly victims. And we talk about, Britney Spears, Katy Perry, Miley Cyrus.
Yeah, I think
there are a
Britney
lot of
Spears
examples
is one
of
the,
these.
like further back.
Yeah,
so
like
that's
what
why we
happened
kinda
with her?
start
If you-
there.
And you can go further back than that. You
what
can go
happened
to-
with her?
But
Like,
let's
Marilyn
start with that
Monroe
because
and go back
it's
to the
so
silent era.
popular.
But yeah, we'll stick with the more recent ones. Something that you might notice some of them have done, and most recently Rose McGowan too, since she's spoken out about the whole
she has a cocaine
sex harassment.
arrest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they all shave their heads at some point.
Yes,
All
I
of them.
was kind of alluding to that.
Right.
I wanted to interrupt and be like, hey, what happened? Like, because Britney Spears is my age. She's actually, I think, a year older.
Is she? Yeah,
She's
I
born in
guess so.
'81,
You're right.
and I was like, what happened when she was like a year? Like it was like mid 2000s, and
Yes.
like it was like Access Hollywood, E Entertainment. Like Britney Spears has nervous breakdown on Hollywood
Right.
Boulevard and shaves her head, and it's like. People don't do that shit in public, especially with cameras around
Yes,
and
they
self-film, unless they like have their publicist there. Like, this is what you're gonna do, and then this is what
So
you're
that's
gonna
the
do.
whole point. It's a breakdown.
It was a
Yeah.
breakdown
You
because
don't have a
she
choice
broke from
where-
her
when it
programming,
happens.
basically.
Okay.
And the same happened with Katy Perry. Again, allegedly
So you're-
20,000
You're
times.
saying they broke from their programming, but kind of explain, like, what's their programming?
Okay, the MK Ultra mind control programming, and they can argue that this goes back further to, the ancient mystic schools, the Egyptians, the Gnostics, and all that shit. But we'll try and
We
keep
don't
it in
have
Hollywood.
time for
Well,
that.
we talked about Latin for 20 minutes, Nick.
That's Nicholas's fault. Stop it. Stop it.
Sorry.
But anyway, okay, so
I'm thinking of all the members of the Mickey Mouse Club that haven't had this shit happen.
Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse,
No,
Donald
Duck,
Duck.
Mickey Mouse. Copyright.
it's because like you asked.
Copyright.
That's why I did it out of tune.
It's because you asked the question, like, are they a part of it or are they victims of it?
But like Timberlake, Jessica Biel, like Ryan Gosling.
Yes.
Ryan
Yes.
Gosling, like
Yeah.
Harrison Ford said, working on Blade Runner 2049 with Ryan Gosling, he's like, oh, he's a Mouseketeer. He knows like his lines.
Yes.
He knows where to stand. And the time I punched him, I'm like, oh shit, that wasn't supposed to happen.
It's because they were groomed to
Okay.
be movie stars. They were
Okay.
groomed to be these celebrities that can shape culture based on their programming
So
done
it's-
by the Illuminati. They're
so-
offered these roles.
So they were almost farmed for
Yes.
it. Like
They were, yeah.
agriculturally as humans.
Yes.
Because it's not like you can like win like your state college, like your state football championship in high school, go to college and be like, woohoo, I'm going to be a business guy, and then be like, no, I'm going to Hollywood and I'm going to be an actor.
I mean,
Right.
you
like
could.
they like
You could go and try, and
But
if
a
you
lot
have
of-
certain elements that are already part of your character
Okay.
that they see that can be shaped, and of
Or
course
an
the physical,
adaptability.
or an adaptability. It also takes an element of drive on the part of the victim.
But also,
they
it
want
takes,
this.
It also takes a matter of like you have to project a certain amount of charm to people.
Of course,
who,
yes.
Like there's a screen, right? And like you have to project like charm to nothing.
And the secret elite can see
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
And they know they can use that if they can get in your head a certain
They're
way.
like, you've got
and
the goods.
And the easiest way to do that
Yeah.
is to give them the promises. They also these victims
It's
also
tit for
need to
tat.
want.
We'll give
yeah.
you what you want if you give us what we want.
And they want the fame, they want the recognition, they want all these things. They're like, well, we can give you those things. You just got to follow us and do what we say.
Explain
Just gotta
David
trust
Bowie
us.
and Seth Rogen.
No, he's not there yet.
David Bowie and Seth Rogen. Don't know
I'm
this
just saying,
one.
like those two are not in the Illuminati. They are on the
Okay,
the
well,
fringes.
all right.
And yet they've changed. Like,
Seth Rogen, I don't know. David Bowie, if you want to look into David Bowie's occult interests, it goes very, very deep.
okay.
Just
But
listen
that's
to the
a-
last podcast.
I'm just- those-
episode
Yeah,
on
last
that. They
podcast
do a
on the
great
left
job.
did a better job than we could ever
can't
do
even
breaking
get
that
close to
down.
that.
Marcus Parks did some incredible research
yeah,
on
just,
that episode.
Just listen to that
But what
episode.
this does is I feel like it impugns people who have done nothing wrong, except they've just been, as a matter of talent and luck and just artificial and natural selection working. Like Tom Hanks. What's going on with that? Like
We don't. Hopefully nothing, but we don't know.
it's like I could buy Steven Spielberg being like he's a creative talent, but he has he has his certain torrid personal life, like first marriage, engagement, like prenup on a napkin, second marriage to Cape Capshaw, divorce, like
First marriage ending because Amy Irving allegedly had an affair with Willie Nelson.
right, and there's all these things that it's like, well, yeah, and now he's like the head of DreamWorks and he has associations, and I'm sure you can't be at the top of the pyramid.
He just held up the dollar.
I held up
Yeah,
the
that was
$1
the
bill
crinkle.
with
Yeah, that's the dollar.
Great for
with
podcast,
like
yeah.
you can't be at the top of the layer cake
Right.
without having some really torrid and bullshit associations that you're like, I can't call this guy out publicly without like basically like devaluing my own wealth and
Yeah,
influence
that's
and
something
all
that
stuff.
is part of the initiation
But
into
it's-
secret societies, the Illuminati, any of those things, is secrecy, especially dark secrets.
Yeah.
They basically like kind of force them into committing these really dark acts, and then the people that know about this secret because they had done it themselves form this elite, this brotherhood or sisterhood or whatever.
Well, it's one of those things where once you're part of it, you can't go against it because you've also done
Yeah,
that.
they know all your bad secrets, and you can't
Secrets-
talk about them because they
Well,
know their
we've
secrets.
kind of hinted.
That's what I'm willing to believe is once you reach a certain echelon in either show business
Of course.
or level of fame, they're like, hey, let me show you into the smoke-filled like.
Yes.
Well, it's one
like,
of those things where it's like,
boardroom.
let me tell you something, and here,
And-
hold this glass for a second. Thanks, we just needed your fingerprint.
They're at the
Don't
fancy
worry
Hollywood
about it.
party, and then there's the after party
And
that
I'm-
maybe you get invited
And
to.
I'm kind of on board with like the whole idea of like once you get to that certain level of fame and influence and like you're an A-lister, whether you ever like whether you ever devalue and kind of diminish back down to being like a B, C, D-lister or just a regular civilian, like at some point they're like, hey, come on in here. We're going to teach you the way the world really works. And it's the Mr. Show sketch where they're like, the whole world operates on a series of blowjobs. Like, are you
Yes.
willing to give us a blowjob?
Basically,
Like-
that's what happens. Yes, that's
and I feel like, okay, well, at some point, yeah, there's that elitism. But also it's like, we're going to call it the Illuminati. We're going to appropriate this thing that people already believe that's hooky and cokey.
All these ancient symbols and robes and weird music.
And that's why it turns out, like,
ritual.
Guess what? Now we have Ben Affleck, fucking Beyonce, and like all these people that you're like, I love Ellen. I would hate it if Ellen was part of it.
Yes, exactly.
Where it's like the best way to hide the truth is out in the open. Like the best way, if you got a secret and you want to hide it, the best way to do it is just tell people. If you just tell them, yes, it's the Illuminati. If you put like half truths in there and you just say it to everybody, nobody believes you. It's that thing where it's like, oh yeah, right.
Does that explain like Beyonce's like Super Bowl halftime performance of the Illuminati and the Black Lives Matter?
Right now, a lot of
basically once you're in that club, you're like, hey, pick your agenda or pick the thing you want to go after, and we'll let you do that thing. And whether that thing's success, like rises or falls, that's like putting your chips on a not like the black or white or black or red of the roulette wheel, because it's not 50-50. It's saying like, oh, you want to align yourself with that cause? If that cause fails, then you have to go away for a while, and maybe you can come back in. And
you mentioned like the Super Bowl halftime show, and a lot of mainstream pop music right now, and especially female pop stars. We're talking Taylor Swift, Miley Cyrus. I don't even know all of them. There's so much Lady Gaga. A lot of Illuminati, steeped in Illuminati imagery and occult imagery in their music videos.
I was just reading yesterday about it was top TV shows of 2017. One of them listed in this list of The Leftovers or just some of the really good TV that's been broadcast in 2017 was Katy Perry's 3 or 4 day YouTube series where she just recorded herself in her own house and had people come over. It was basically like a live stream. I didn't either.
Never heard of it.
And I'm like, why is this included in this list? Is it just to tell me hey, by the way, Katy Perry did this thing? I'm like, I don't know. I liked Teenage Dream.
Well, we've kind of teased about all these female artists, but we haven't really gotten into it at all.
Right.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what the whole Illuminati,
basically they hold a role in this conspiracy.
What is the end game?
We've talked about the end game. It's causing suffering in the world in a wider sense because the elite thrive on that suffering, and they're using the media to do that. And part of the ritual is the sacrificial virgin. And we see again and again they find these young ingenues. I know virgin used in a symbolic sense.
So we've reached the 21st century, but we're still doing
exactly.
Psychologically, we're still the Aztec priests at the top of the pyramid committing ritual
Let's find the beautiful young girl and then prop her up to the height of beauty and fame and stardom, make her this shining star, and then let's destroy her.
That happens to so much of regular Hollywood, especially
it does, but especially
the idea here is that it's orchestrated. Yes, it's designed for that purpose.
The breakdown happens in the same pattern.
But the breakdown is open to redemption. I'm just thinking of so many male child Hollywood actors
it's not only
have succumbed to suicide. Jonathan Brandis of Sidekicks, what is it? The Sequest DSP.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Brad Renfro of Apt Pupil.
Heath Ledger, who not necessarily a suicide, but still a death.
Forced into method acting by basically mixing barbiturates.
It's not just women. It's not gender specific at all. But they are sacrifices. These young, shining. You're making faces like I'm trying to convince you of this.
You're just
I'm telling you about it. I'm not saying. I'm not trying to make you saying it's true.
But it's just oh, come on, man.
Yeah, but that's the idea. Is that these are the shining stars that because they hold so much power and so much light, when they're destroyed,
to make them break. What is
the
ramp?
They can be shaped and they can be created. Something that's known, but about the elite, especially the children of the elite, or when they find these young children, because this brainwashing happens at a very young age. And they're using the same techniques that MK Ultra used starting in the 50s, and that's causing severe trauma.
And if you don't know what MK Ultra is...
I'm going to slow you down there because I want you to give us a small primer on MK Ultra.
What is MK Ultra was a program created by the CIA during the Cold War, basically to use psychological methods to create super spies, super soldiers, by fracturing the human mind and creating personas within it. So basically the main idea was like they could grab someone that works in the Soviet embassy, grab him off the street, throw him into a van, take him to a place, give him some drugs and flash some lights and do some crazy shit to his mind, create an alter personality that he is not aware of himself. His main personality is not aware of, using the same kind of, people with multiple dissociative disorders, what it's called now.
To make you dissociate.
Yeah. They dissociate because of a certain trauma is so intense that they can't deal with it on their own. They create another personality that experienced the trauma.
So what you're saying is a form of like
and it's just
human psychological control
they were
and
also
manipulation.
Trying to make weapons.
Inducing that trauma in order to create that alter personality.
And I almost want to slow that down because like MK Ultra is a radical version of what already happens in any time you either go to school or you enter into the military, because what they do is like when you join the military, like what they do is they wipe the slate clean through repetition.
That's how you're a good soldier. This was taking it to the next level.
Through
drill sergeants.
Through physical.
Constant abuse.
They also were doing
not
other
abuse,
experiments.
But just verbal abuse.
Well, but what it does is it serves.
It breaks you down so that they can build you up as the thing you want. They want you to be.
Yes.
And they were also doing experiments where they were trying to make it so that people could see into the minds of others. So what they wanted was soldiers that could sit in the U.S. in a white room, and write down secrets that they were learning from the minds of soldiers in other countries.
And that gets to remote viewing, which we talked about in the last episode.
All sorts of stuff like that. This was all part of
last
MK
episode
Ultra.
I was on.
Here's the thing. It's been used in movies a lot.
Yeah.
It's kind of a trope now. It's a thing.
The men who stare at goats.
Yeah.
But the thing is, people don't understand that this is true. This isn't
This is true, yeah. There are documents that say that this was a government program.
Attempted these things, yes.
And it was called MK Ultra. You can look it up. This was a real government program.
They did LSD experiments in the Air Force and the CIA.
That's all true.
Crazy
but
shit.
the idea is some of those elements were taken.
What they wanted to do is accelerate and amplify that process.
And we mentioned Anton LaVey earlier. When Anton LaVey was starting the Church of Satan, he had a good friend that was kind of his second in command there, named Michael Aquino. Michael Aquino was a top military official who was heavily involved in MK Ultra. Later, in a child sex scandal at what's it called? The one in San Francisco.
Monterey?
No, the military base there.
Camp Pendleton?
I don't know, some military base. Look it up.
The Marine base in
Marine base in the Presidio.
Okay.
Yes, the Presidio. And this guy, he was a top-ranking military official. And check my facts on this. I'm giving you it's the story, but I'm getting some details. Yeah.
This is all in his head.
I'm maybe getting small details wrong, but this is the main gist of it. And but he was a top-ranking military official and an out Satanist, and he looked like one. He had these weird eyebrows, and he's on Oprah. You can go on
Google
YouTube.
Him.
Yeah, Google him. Michael Aquino.
Was he on Sally Jesse?
He might have been.
Yeah,
talking about being a open Satanist in the military, but he was heavily involved with MK Ultra and all of that. And he broke from the Church of Satan basically because Anton LaVey created the Church of Satan because he wanted to party and freak out the normies. And Michael Aquino took Satanism.
More of a humanist movement.
Right.
And guess what? He created by being kooky and stuff, he created a safe space where people were like, oh yeah, I don't want to be a normie. I'll be a white supremacist instead. He created that safe space by being radical and
the Church of Satan. That's a whole other issue. But Michael Aquino took occultism very, very seriously.
But by doing that, by pushing back the buffers and saying what's acceptable and what's not, guess what's filled that void and that vacuum? I'm sure that the Lucian Graves.
I'm just saying you can't.
I blame everyone for everything.
Everybody's fault.
Anyway, MK Ultra, which has ties to occultism with Michael Aquino, who allegedly was involved with a large child sex ring.
Yes.
Yeah,
it was a big scandal.
It was a huge Pizzagate type stuff.
Yeah.
There was an actual real story. I'm not giving credence to Pizzagate.
For clarification, we don't
go.
believe in Pizzagate. No. Pizzagate is an alt-right conspiracy bullshit thing that was invented.
He's muted our mics.
And he's quieting us.
Okay,
and forwarded.
We agree with you, Nick.
And promulgated by
Move on with your life. We agree with you.
Bullshit heads like
turn us back up.
I did. I turned it.
But there are we're back. But there are large child sex rings operating within the country and internationally. The Pizzagate thing was a stretch, trying to pin it on this one situation. But there are instances of that. Look up the Franklin cover-up in the 80s. That is a very real thing.
Or the Navy sex ring with FDR. All that stuff.
Yes.
A lot of this
these are very real things.
Sounds absolutely crazy kooky, and it's very easy to just look and say, like, oh, this is bullshit. But, I mean...
And that's part of why they bring...
Guess what?
Well...
Human beings in their current form...
You and I...
We haven't
Nick,
changed in...
We work in financial
we see this
crimes.
all the time.
You see it. It's real.
Like,
it's there.
We know
there's
money going back and forth for ill-advised and bad purposes.
And people are like, oh, sex rings. You see it.
And we're like, huh...
Companies we work for catch it and report it.
A lot of that shit's happening through states like Atlanta and Florida for a very good reason.
The thing is, a lot of this, how much of this do we see?
Yeah.
Where they talk about it and they catch human trafficking and child sex trafficking rings. They catch them. They put them in jail. All of this happens without the public really ever even knowing about it.
Right.
And we see the behind the scenes.
And then these child sex rings, that's when the MK Ultra programming starts. Because MK Ultra morphed into a program called Project Monarch.
Because wouldn't you, if you were just being trained in this and then you, got discharged, wouldn't you be like, I have a specific... Wouldn't you, be like the Liam Neeson of evil and be like, I have a specific set of skills?
If they got discharged. If it's not still a government-involved program. Because, again, the secret societies, the Illuminati, the Skull and Bones, the Masons, many high-ranking officials within the government are part of these secret societies.
See, here's where the part of me that's like, okay, so at some point, somebody went through the whole, Mr. Smith goes to Washington, and they become, mayor of their town. And everybody loves them. And then they decide to run for Congress, and they run for Congress, and nobody
exactly
tells
the same thing that happens in Hollywood if you want to be a star.
And then they move to, hey, I'm going to run for Senate, and, then that happens.
Yeah, if you want to get to those higher... Every step of the way, you have to corrupt yourself.
Once you hold your hand up and become Senate, they're like, all right, we're going to give you the intelligence briefing right now. Mm-hmm. Here's everything that's going on. Here's the evil shit that's happening, and here's why we're letting it happen.
Yes,
because these evil people are also dropping dimes on terrorists
and a lot
and
of
things that are national security threats.
That they involve these people. It's that thing where you're like,
no, it's
hey,
all
can you
dirt.
Come over? We need your help, and then. All of a sudden, the next thing they know, they're helping you bury a body.
Right.
And they're like, oh, I'm going to go to the cops. Like,
right.
You can, but your DNA's all over this, too.
Right.
What are you going to do about it?
It's
and they
that
can't
happens,
do anything.
It happens in Atlanta. There's, a slave ring and all that shit. And then it's okay, well, it turns out, the nephew of the Coca-Cola Corporation actually is the one who's benefiting the most financially and sexually from the slave ring that they find in Atlanta, Georgia. And they're like... the governor, and two senators are briefed, and they're like, you can't do this.
Yeah, and it goes all the way up. Donald Trump was very closely associated with Jeffrey Epstein, who was convicted
of child sex trafficking and repeatedly going after
convicted
of children.
And Donald Trump was implicated right alongside him.
There are accusations.
But because he had his legal army that he threw at it,
I'm not a curmudgeon
and now he's now president of the United States.
I'm not a curmudgeon when it comes to confirmation bias. I think Donald Trump has actually probably fucked underage children without remorse and been and his wife is just like, well, that's fine. Just let me decorate the White House like Edward Scissorhands.
I mean, I kind of want her to come decorate my house, but...
like Edward Scissorhands?
Well, I mean, just it looked horrible.
No, it didn't. It looks wonderful.
Okay, but the before-after is just
everyone's
holy
making
shit.
fun of it, and I'm like, this is my
But that's
because
you're twisted, but you're not
oh, thank you.
But you're not kid fucking twisted.
Ew, okay.
Okay,
wow.
That's the title.
Anyways,
you're twisted, but you're not kid fucking twisted.
How does this make...
Oh, you're a pretty...
How does this make pop stars shave their heads? What does any of this have to do?
So, the child sex rings.
I'm sorry, let me just
Nick,
can I not shell it for a second?
Stop derailing us.
Maybe I'm 35. Britney Spears is 36 with 2 kids, or how many kids with Kevin or whatever, Kevin Federline. If she had any inkling that like what she was doing in Vegas right now, aside from like the fact that she, her parents basically have been given power of attorney and are forcing her to perform for their benefit, like. Let's say you're a person of conscience in this, like, web of just filth and human greed and bullshit. What keeps that going? Why haven't there been leaks?
We don't know, because you won't let them tell us.
Okay, well, I want to step back a little bit just so we can build up to what the system is, and then we'll figure out why the leaks and stuff aren't happening. So these child sex rings...
Because leaks are happening at the highest form of the government.
Yes.
Shush. Yeah. I'm going to put
They're
a gag on
now.
you.
Today. Yeah.
But, so these child sex rings, and they're not always... The child sex rings are where they're farmed. There are also ones that are brought in, that are discovered. And these are, in Hollywood especially, because you have so many young people going to Hollywood to become stars, they're predisposed to want this thing. Whereas the children in the child sex rings are trained to want this thing through trauma, through conditioning. And then what happens, using the same techniques...
And then what happens on their off day? They get like Captain Crunch and an ice cream bar?
They don't have an off day.
Or what?
That's the point.
Oh, okay.
There's no off days.
Or... The off days are lives
so
that they
controlled.
lived as a certain personality, but their other personality that were created through very traumatic, very intense abuse, fractured their minds into these multiple personalities. And so certain personalities were involved in these rituals, in these sex rites, in this sexual abuse, and then they had their normal life as how they can appear like normal people.
And then you're saying, like, what happens when they... like fulfill their purpose or
when ones show a certain affinity for being able to split very cleanly, and they can be abused, they can be used as
children of trauma,
as playthings for the elite, basically, and not remember it. And then they also have a certain charisma; they can become public figures and be used in the media as movie stars and pop stars that can be used to shape public opinion. They rise them up through fame, through these connections. These elite who control all these, have these avenues of control, rise them up to this point, and they become these superstars. But when that can only hold for so long. At some point,
there's a breaking.
There's a breaking, because that's a very intense lifestyle.
I was to say, what's the retirement plan here?
At some point, cracks start to form, and the trauma starts to bleed back into that main charismatic personality, and they have a breakdown, and they break and they snap, and then... that's when we see the head shavings, which in the Middle Ages, when a woman would shave her head, that was a sign of shame, of grief. If a woman had committed adultery and then it led to all this disaster,
or
sometimes just a deep sadness,
or a deep sadness, or as a way of atonement, she would shave her head.
True, as atonement or forced atonement, like when
or forced to shave her,
or like when the Netherlands, when the Allied forces recaptured with the Dutch,
even in World War II,
after World War II, what they did was they found the women that collaborated with
Nazis,
and
they forced them to shave their heads. That tradition goes back even further beyond medieval times, but it
deep and it's traumatic. And it's basically like, oh, that's unavoidable. You can't fake not having shaved.
And sometimes,
head.
like Britney Spears did it to an extreme point because it happened at the height of her breakdown, and they really honed in on that. And the way the media went after that too, the media controlled by these elites.
Well, I mean, these paparazzi follow them everywhere, so it's like
there's another kind of idea that the paparazzi is controlled by this media.
Exactly,
that's another arm of their control.
And it's probably partially what led to that breakdown. Is it's like you can't get away, so you're like, well, fine, you want a show? Here.
But then you see it with Miley Cyrus, who was this Disney child star, who was this kind of squeaky clean.
She was supposed to be very wholesome, very family oriented.
Billy Ray Cyrus, country music star, but again, country music star, he was still a huge star. So at what point is he involved in this? And a lot of times it is generational. And that's also why we see so much the children of celebrities being involved with so much trauma in their lives and becoming fucked up people lots of times. I mean, I'm sure a lot of them are very nice people. But still, you hear all these stories of again, I'm not saying this is all true, but this is the story.
Allegedly.
But yes, and then if you see, Miley Cyrus is a perfect example. Something happened with her programming where they decided that something bled through into something else about the trauma she was experiencing when she's supposed to be this squeaky clean star.
Right. So
and then she had to become this.
We need to give her a punk rock persona.
We got to give her a new persona that fits more with that programming. Let's make her into this hypersexualized, crazy thing.
See, I don't see that as like an organized, like massive. Like top-down organizational thing.
No, it's not, because that's bullshit.
What I see that as like publicists just trying to do their best.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, I want to get paid. I want to keep this thing going.
But so here's the thing. The thing is that
what's going to disrupt the money train? I see it as a pursuit
it's
of
not
greed.
so much that it's like
and
the
clicks.
conspiracy isn't that after the breakdown that's still like the whole point is that they are a product that is being used, and once they're used up and they have that breakdown, then their publicists whatever come in and swoop in. That's the point, though, is before that is they're being used for programming. So it's like that thing where it's like
the Illuminati assumes top down, right? Like it assumes
it's like that thing where it's like maybe you have a boss or somebody above you that's like a real jerk to you, and you put up with it, and you put up with it, and you put up with it, and maybe you've had a bad day, and one day you're just gonna scream, like you know what I mean? It's like that thing, or somebody that's like a family member is like always nagging you, and you just like put up with it until one day when you don't. It's like that programming. They put up with it because they want the fame. They want to get paid. They put up with it, but they put up with it, and eventually
because they've been conditioned to accept a certain amount of abuse to achieve their goals.
And here's how I see that. I don't see that as like, oh, this is top down. Like this is the way we've organized the structure of fame or the world or performance or an industry. I see that as like this is systemic, like patriarchy and and sexual abuse and just enforced like hetero patriarchal like
not all
things or hetero or homosexual, just however you want to define it. Basically, like in any organization, this stuff kind of just happens.
But here's
because
the thing.
of the way that human behavior is and different power dynamics. And what happens is like, abuse becomes rampant. And it flowers at a lower strata, and then like basically there are gatekeepers that you've risen to a certain strata, and so you know what's acceptable and what's not. And you have kind of like side conversations and say like, hey, this is acceptable, it's not acceptable.
Heidi, but he's not
and then basically what happens is I feel like there are people that see this kind of thing and they see it as, oh, this is internally almost self-corrupting, and they see that cross industries, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's like whether it's religion, whether it's the medical industry, or whether it's like
you could hit that like 15-second fast forward button at this point.
Yeah, I know.
No, but the point
and basically they're just like no, it's the Illuminati. They did it.
Well, here's the thing. And here's the thing.
Fuck everyone. Yeah.
Copyright My Favorite Murder.
Yeah.
So the thing is,
what should you wear? You're wearing an ugly.
No, I'm not wearing a My Favorite Murder shirt.
But what does it say?
It says "Bah Humbug."
Oh, okay.
The thing is, people have this conspiracy not
what are you wearing,
because
Chris? Oh, it's a black shirt.
Break down. Everybody breaks down at some point, but in the way in which they break down, in the pattern that they break down, and the fact that it has a similarity. Because you can work at a workplace and watch 5 people have a breakdown, and they're all going to do it a little bit differently. It's not the same. You're going to have the people that just like cry and just like run out of work someday. You're going to have the person that throws their phone out the window. You're going to have the person that just like punches their supervisor. Part of what leads to the conspiracy is that all of these individuals have kind of a similar trajectory towards fame. They have kind of a similar demographic, and they all have a very similar way of breaking down the pattern. And that's what leads to this conspiracy theory that Chris has been trying to tell us.
So when disruptive anomalies happen,
trying to get the truth out there.
Like when disruptive anomalies happen,
the pirates happens too.
And you think it's like, oh, this is happening to me. So it's like, oh my god, this is the first time I experienced this. And it's like, oh, you think what's happening to you is special? Do you think this is what's happening to you is unique? Human beings.
Can you tell he's in a bit of like a nihilist mood?
This is what you're talking about. Like from the people that are just like, okay, I work at a toll booth. I know all. I have categorized, and basically through experience, I've experienced all the different ways that people can react to having to pull up to a toll booth and pay a ticket, or not have money to pay a ticket. And you think what you're experiencing, that
pirates
frustration,
to toll booths.
All right.
I'm just saying, like, there's a gatekeeper,
Of course,
right?
it's
Yes.
not special.
I'm talking
but
about,
let's say like
I'm just saying, like, what you're experiencing, or like, if you're in that industry, if you're in a set position, what you're experiencing is not special or unique when they're like,
no
oh,
one's
this
special.
is
You're all.
it's the history of the universe and humanity, except now we have actual labels and structures, and whereas
Kind of,
whereas
but-
previously in antiquity it got like less specific.
Well, here's
and
the
less
thing.
Specific
It's like
until
that
it was less
joke.
organized. But
It's
now
like-
we're a very highly we have a bureaucracy and a title and I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be the skeptical
I know.
one, but I'm just saying,
I
like,
know.
You're like
Yeah,
going
no,
over
this
your
is all- this is all
well, it's
understood.
like that.
We
it's
don't
like
disagree
that
with you.
joke. I know
Okay.
you're like explaining like, so here's the color blue. So have you ever seen this guy? So at a place that I worked, the joke was that one of the disgruntled employees that got fired or angered or whatever was going to come back and blow up the building.
yeah.
That was the joke. Did it ever happen? No. Not once. I don't think that
Not
in the
yet.
whole time I was there, one disgruntled employee who may have had reason,
They're
none of them
they're on
ever
an
came
NSA
back.
list.
They didn't blow anything up. They didn't light anything on fire. They didn't even try to seek revenge. And that's the thing that we're trying to say is it's like, that's like, oh, we expect this. But nobody expects a superstar to shave their head or
I would.
why? Because it's happened before?
No, I'm saying, like, it might be shave your head 10 years ago. It might be
That's true. It does change
It
over
might be-
time.
it
but
does.
we're seeing it now.
But
It
this
might
way.
be Bud Dwyer holding a press conference and blowing his head off,
Yeah.
and inspiring.
But
Exactly.
what's
like,
super
hey, man, nice shot.
interesting...
It might be the Coney 2012 guy, like, running down traffic and throwing his clothes off. In some way, basically, like, what we've come to expect is for certain personalities, and the human mind is only so creative, and it's only wired so many ways that
Exactly.
yeah, when you hit this point, there's going to be a break, and when that break happens, it's going to happen like one of
Well, it's kind of like, have you ever had a blue screen on your computer?
yeah.
And so have other people. Did you necessarily do the same thing?
No.
But did you? Maybe. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I did this, 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 and this, and tech support goes, yeah, and then this happened, and you're like, oh, how'd you know? Well, I did this to the programming, and it
I've
responded
only
in this
answered
way.
this question so many
Right?
times in my life.
So it's one of
yeah.
those things where like, oh, you clicked it 12 times and it
That's-
froze?
that
Oh
was,
my gosh.
That was my toll booth parable. Like,
Well, but that's my point,
Uh-huh.
is this is where, oh, look, we're getting back on track. This is where that conspiracy comes from, where
Right.
they have a certain programming.
It's not a conspiracy.
And
it's
once the programming breaks down, it breaks down in the same expected way.
okay.
So tell us what that expected way is. Do you know a little bit like about what we generally see? We see the head shaving. What is something else that people have said they see?
Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, the Shia LaBeouf did a kind of a similar thing. Just a total breakdown is sort of like having a rejection
Wearing
of
a bag on
fame.
his head,
Yeah.
yeah.
As he literally said, "I am not famous anymore." You know, that was a little.
Yeah.
Even for a
and
MK
I
Ultra
have
breakdown,
no
that
ill will
was too
for
much.
him. I'm sure
Yeah.
he's like he grew up a child of a hippie and
Another Disney child star,
Yeah.
and
He was,
yeah, thrust into one of, at least tried to make him into one of the biggest actors in Hollywood.
right.
And then something went wrong at some point, and then this
But at
happened.
the same time, a sympathetic guy. Like I don't have any ill will toward the man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
personally
all
All right.
don't. But it's at the same
Should
time,
we?
like if all of this is so like predictable, and there's a conspiracy, and there's people rebelling
what's the point of the-
against the
so you-
structure of this tree or this web that's kind of like basically it's like a fossilized type of like control structure or conspiracy or Illuminati or organization. Who's the next? Who would be your like top three next, according to the Illuminati, most susceptible to break?
I don't know. I don't know celebrity culture that much. I think part of it was a big part of it is the public humiliation. Like this is human sacrifice. This is going back
Say
to the
like
Aztecs.
Lena Dunham.
Lena Dunham, possibly. I'd probably say more like.
But Lena Dunham kind
No.
of
maybe
like,
there was a
I don't think so because
No.
well,
I don't think Lena
I
Dunham.
mentioned it because she's getting some like
lot of flack,
lot
but
of-
I think
lot
that's
of
a whole
flack
different issue.
for basically
Maybe-
being inarticulate and bad at explaining like associations with sexual predators. But
Yeah.
at the same time,
And I'd say, and I bear
at
no.
the same time, she courts controversy
Yeah.
and revels in being kind of a public shithead.
That's a different thing, though. But I'm talking someone like and
Allegedly.
I bear
Allegedly.
no ill will ill toward these people, and I don't want bad things to happen to these people. I'm not saying that, but someone who that might happen to in this conspiracy thing, which I don't even myself believe in. All the thing you were rambling about for a while, I believe. I agree with you. That's why we weren't interested in talking about it, because we are all in agreement on that. We want to talk about the crazy shit. Maybe someone like Jennifer Lawrence or Scarlett Johansson,
I could definitely see
who are still at the top of their game, who are still beloved.
That's like 7 years old.
No, but what I'm showing you, okay, I held up my phone. Lena Dunham described sexually abusing her little sister.
Right.
That's why she's not a good human sacrifice victim.
I don't think she's...
This is why we're saying no, she's not the
she's not the elite
good girl.
prime
and what I've read,
sacrifice.
What I've read in recent days has been like, okay, well, who's the fucking psycho in Hollywood?
Right,
like,
but then look what happened. Lindsay Lohan is a good example.
Mm-hmm.
She was a huge star. Everyone loved wholesome. Everyone loved Lindsay Lohan, and then they had to instead of taking her to the top of the
4th, he asked me what day it was. It's October 4th.
Instead of taking her to the top of a pyramid and slitting her throat, they do it publicly in the media. They shame them. Now she's this train wreck because of these drugs, because of her sexual antics, because of all this shit.
And also, I think it was either last year or the year before, there was Amanda Bynes.
Amanda Bynes is another prime example,
what I've read is in terms of who's Kevin Spacey, open secret. I think you even talked about that. Allegedly.
Yeah, when I was in film school, I heard people talking about that.
But what I've read recently is, I read a thing where it's the guy who just scares me to no end is John Cusack. And that broke my heart, because John Cusack was he's all into kickboxing and all this stuff.
I didn't hear about what's going on with John Cusack.
Well, basically, people that have encountered him.
Projecting that potentially.
Not that he's a sexual predator, but just there's nothing behind his eyes. There's nothing there.
All programming.
And the thing is, he grew up and he was a child actor, kind of. He was a teenage actor, but he grew up in the same kind of community as Jeremy Piven. They were close friends growing up. Jeremy Piven. And then John Cusack's into kickboxing. He's actually a black belt in kickboxing.
What does that have to do with anything?
He does his own. Well,
I'm
the
a
thing
black
is,
belt.
He has a
I'm wearing a black belt. What does that mean?
Not a propensity to violence, but familiarity with it. He did all his own fight scenes in Grosse Point Blank. And it was against another professional kickboxer.
Martial arts and kickboxing violence.
Just how many other violent things has he done?
I'm just saying, but when people meet him, they're like, oh yeah, there's nothing behind John Cusack's face. Yeah. I'm waving my eyes in front of my face.
And a lot of these celebrities, if you look at someone like
they're dead-eyed.
Tom Cruise, who is now known to be nuts.
Right.
But apparently, him, when you meet him, people say he's the most charming motherfucking guy you'll ever meet.
That's the point.
And that's something he was groomed to because he had to have some kind of innate ability to do that already, and they could see that. The elite could see that, and so they conditioned him into this thing. So
the people that Tom Hanks meets on the street, if you meet him in a what is it, a handshake line or whatever it's called, or if you get a one-on-one with him, the thing about Tom Cruise is
the guy in the pizza shop with the pictures.
He's an international superstar, and he, from what I've been told from people who meet him, they say he makes you feel in that very millisecond and that instant that you meet him, he makes you feel like you're the most important person in his world. And it's just a
lot of stars can do that.
A lot of stars
and that's why they're stars.
They
that's why
project
they're
this hyper charisma, right? But
that's how Brent Spiner was when I met him.
Brent Spiner.
Brent Spiner might have that.
I met him, and he was fantastic.
You are welcome on this podcast anytime. You can tell us about ghost stories or data or whatever. You are definitely
Or if you want to expose the secrets of the Illuminati.
Or you can sign my video game for a third time.
Yeah. After you bought it off eBay and then had him sign it?
Yeah. Twice.
Hey, I'm back again.
Yeah,
you
the third time. The second time was his choice.
I love Brent Spiner. That man.
He was great, but he had that same kind of charisma where it's I was in line at Comic-Con for 2 seconds, and in those 2 seconds, I was like, just sure, whatever.
I will do what you say, sir. You're
fantastic.
You're the bee's knees.
Oh, I was so starstruck.
And that's why these people are chosen. Among these children that they're trying to groom, some are just used as
human traits.
But what are they doing?
All right,
so you said they're trying to bring about, some sort of suffering, but what is the message that they are conveying to people? What are they doing to us when we're watching?
It's almost like
Britney Spears, what's happening to our brains?
It's almost like a Matrix thing. They want to...
Because that's okay, so I talked about the top part of A New Kemptis, which is God.
He's holding the crinkle means the
All right,
dollar again.
Pull out your dollar
bill.
No, pull out your dollar bills because I'm
Nick's
about to get
to rant.
Yeah, Anuit Keptis is God. He favors our undertaking. Like basically, like the reason it's on the dollar bill is God looks down upon America and he sees the idea of America and what we're trying to do, what we're trying to do, and he's like, yeah, I'm on board with that. Yeah, create America. That's amazing. Like invite as many people as you want. Like do the freedom thing.
Do the thing.
I'm on board.
And
with that.
then when you build your capital, make sure the streets form a pentagram.
Right, but there's a ribbon underneath the pyramid that says Novus. It says Novus Ordo.
He doesn't know Latin.
It says Novus Ordo Seclorum. And what that means is a new order has begun. Or a new world order. Mm-hmm. And what that means is like basically like we have hit the reset button, and what InfoWars and George H.W. Bush and a lot of conspiracy theorists, Illuminati, is like new world order. They're like like basically it's like, hey, guess what? This is a realignment. And a lot of the time, the New World Order doesn't include. Hey, that doesn't have room for you, the listener, the purple on the person on the other end of like if you're hearing my voice, if my voice is coming through your earphones or your car stereo speakers, this New World Order doesn't have a place for you. They've turned that like benevolent message of saying like human history from the time we could be able to start writing human history has just been one thing after another of misery and pain and suffering and
all orchestrated by this elite because it's what powers them.
And genocide and the New World Order or Nuovo.
What do they do with this power when they gather it? What does it do?
It's saying like, hey,
they get off on it. That's
here's
literally
that's
basically the ultimate.
Here's a chance to wipe the slate. That's honestly what New World Order means.
It's on the
$1 bill. We put it on like I don't have a $100 bill in my pocket. I haven't had one in my pocket for like a year.
Who carries cash?
That's not safe to carry around a $100 bill.
That's
but anyway, the end game. What is their ultimate goal?
Right.
So you're saying it's like they feed off of it.
It's like an example is like the Matrix. They're like the machines that are using the masses to manipulate our minds into suffering. They create, especially through Hollywood, through the media,
like
these false image that we can't achieve, and that causes a psychological pain that they feed on.
Are you saying their job is to institute pain and the end result
through the illusion of pleasure
is apathy?
Yes.
It's basically like, in your everyday life, when you come home from your job and you pull in at 5:15 from your commute, and you turn on the local news and you're like, it's going to be rainy tomorrow, but also here's Miley Cyrus swinging through on a wrecking ball. You're just like, I'm not going to call my senator.
Yes. And also creating this. That's why they create.
I'm sorry, that amuses me. Like,
right,
but I get it.
But they're creating an apathetic mass.
Sometimes
that is
works.
Suffering slowly. If they were just jabbing us with sticks, literally, that can only work for so long. They develop a system where they make everyone apathetic in a certain way, and then everyone's suffering slowly on the inside, and then that trickles upward to them.
And it's really also that thing of like, how often do you see where it's like some celebrity couple is breaking up, and they're on the news, and it's all over Facebook, and then meanwhile, some law is being passed, and you're like, hello, guys, hi, law being passed that affects us, and everyone's like, but I can't believe that they broke up.
Batman broke up with Jennifer Garner.
Oh my god, but they were so cute together. Did you not see them in 2002 when they had that one picture where they were eating ice cream?
Meanwhile, your taxes are going to go up more.
And that's I think the real evil in it is that it's like
that's the orchestration.
Yeah, it's distraction.
I can see that. But here's the thing: my taxes are going to go up. Fine. Let me show me what I'm paying for. Guess what? The tax bill that is still in debate tonight, and I don't know, according to Twitter, creates a $1 trillion deficit.
Save it for your political show.
So
they also want our blood.
So 9 minutes ago,
hold up.
So 9 minutes ago, two male Kumail Nanjiani just tweeted shit.
No, that's great.
So I don't know what happened.
Let's not get too depressed. Anyways, back to the Illuminati, Chris.
They also literally want our blood.
Okay, tell us
Not
about
ours
that.
specifically, but
not mine
this is
specifically.
Something within. It could be.
Oh, okay. I mean, mine's semi-rare, you know.
But there's something. This is. I forget the name of the actual drug. And this is probably 0% scientifically accurate. But something in these occult
doctors, let us know.
Elitist satanic rituals is torture and sacrifice.
Okay.
And what it does is when the body is tortured,
they're releasing the endorphins,
releasing a certain type of adrenaline, especially that can be collected, and it apparently is the biggest high in the world. And that's something that the elite crave.
They could just find people with adrenal problems.
They could. You think they could find... But no, it's about the whole ritual of it and the finding the victim and the ceremony and the ritual of torturing the victim.
I mean, you find somebody with adrenal problems, you look at them too fast and you're going to send their fight or flight off.
So
And then they harvest the literal blood with syringes at that moment.
So what do they do
with
it? Are they consuming it or are they injecting it into themselves?
They consume it. They inject
it. We're recording this
it
overnight between December 1st and December 2nd of 2017. And are any of you familiar with Christopher Titus?
Yes.
Who's Christopher Titus?
Comedian?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sitcom guy.
Titus,
from Fox,
he had a brilliant sitcom on Fox called Titus.
Yes.
Early 2000s, I want to say. That was very
noted
good.
For political stances or policy. No, not so much.
I don't know. No.
Christopher Titus on Twitter just now. This is in the tax plan.
Nick, all this equipment is at your house. You can record this other show.
It's true. You could anytime you wanted.
This is
he really wants it to be the next show.
You know how many hours of YouTube research I did for this?
Do you know what I'm talking?
I do. Yes. I don't disagree with anything you're saying.
So that,
but that's not what we're talking about. Right
we're talking about this politically, right? But you're talking about like the Illuminati. And the elite
because that's the episode.
That's the topic.
But you control.
Our
but if they control the universe, how is that not folded into what I'm talking? Like what you're talking?
Because it is. But we're focusing on
kind of getting
the media.
Not,
okay.
Yeah.
And the occult devil stuff.
Right.
Because this is a paranormal show that delves into weird dark shit.
Okay.
All right, Commercian.
Yeah.
Take a seat.
All right.
You're on stage.
I don't know where to go from at this point.
Right, I know, it's so devolved into
this is like your longest episode ever.
So,
this is a situation where, like, if I'm the most sober person in the room, there's a problem.
So this being said, like, I'm just like the reason I'm bringing up politics that's happening at this minute is because
you're mad.
It's not
mad as heck.
No, it's not immune to what you're talking about.
No, there's the politics side of it is a whole. It is involved.
Yes,
but we were talking about the media end of it.
I mean, we can take anything and turn it political.
Twitter
I'm pretty good
is
at
media.
that.
Like when I pull up Twitter, I can see Katy Perry tweeting
the
about the same shit that I'm just talking about.
Yeah.
I talked about Christopher Titus. He's not a media presence now, but he ran a show and he was a heavy presence on Fox main broadcast network. And people in media are now speaking up.
Aren't you supposed to be the curmudgeon?
So I'm saying.
Wait, are you buying into this?
I'm not buying into it one way or the
Do
other.
you
I'm just
believe
not.
in the Illuminati?
What I'm saying as a curmudgeon is, it's not top down. It's not self-organized. It's not like an emperor at the top of
the whole world is shit.
Like,
everything is shit, and everybody should just get used to it.
I'm saying it's chaos.
It's all chaos.
I'm saying
everything is random. You're all gonna die.
No,
your lives are gonna be mediocre.
Okay.
Your jobs are gonna be mediocre. Your marriages are gonna be mediocre. Everything is gonna be mediocre, and you're all gonna die at the end.
Yeah, just learn to write good jokes. And that has been the Illuminati episode.
Okay, I'm off track.
What I'm saying is, like, how do you keep the elite from putting their thumb on the scale? And I'm saying, like, there's 320 million people putting their tiny thumbs on the scale in the either opposite or forward. I know they don't equal as much.
Not everybody's thumbs.
But the minds of all of them are being controlled by the one through the use of the media, through the pop stars.
But at the same time, the people that are doing that are saying, like they work for the government. They're saying, like, and I'm proud to be
Some of them are.
Some of them are. Some of them are going,
they have to go at different angles.
I'm saying most people, most people that either work for the government or even in the CIA, like, most people that actually enter into civil service are like patriots, not because
I
they
don't know if I'd say that's
because
true.
they entertain the idea of control, but because they believe
Sure,
in the
yes.
idea of what America can be or what they want it to be, which is like and I stand up next to you and defend
God, this is your show, so you can pay
yeah,
for
I was
that
like,
song.
I don't want it to be that. No, I think that a lot of people.
So-
Here's the thing: if you don't have optimism, what do you have? Because it's like, okay, well then, why am I even bothering? So
Why
I don't
am
think
I
it's
even
so much exactly at
We
this
had this
point.
conversation
Let's just
last
let me
night.
turn your mic off. So I
gonna
think
guess
no,
what
I really
this
did
is.
turn his mic off.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of people, it's not so much that it's like, I'm proud to be an American. It's just that. What else? Like, yeah, I'm joining the government because fuck all of you. Fuck the government. No, you don't do that. Like, that's not what people are going to do. You have to have an optimism. You have to,
Currently,
want.
that's 35% of the country. Currently, that is. It's
But
like
they
vote
think.
because fuck you.
But no, they think that that's the America they want. And this is the thing, is it's like, sometimes people say, like, you can't say, oh, all patriots are bad. All patriotism is toxic. Yes, there's an
I'm
amount
not.
of.
I'm not anti-patriot.
I know, but you
I'm
sound
saying
that way.
Weeks of research.
Hey, Chris,
Extracted
have you heard
focus.
the theory that Avril Lavigne is actually dead and they have a doppelganger taking her place?
That's a very common thing that comes up a lot.
Right?
You hear that with a
All
lot
right,
of
I'm just going to
celebrities.
fade myself out. All right.
With like the
You guys-
moles that are different. She has like different moles in her face and
Honestly,
stuff. So
you guys
I
can
went
finish
into
the
that
show
thinking
anyway.
that was kind of bullshit, but then I started reading an article and I was like, oh my god,
Yeah.
once you could dig into that rabbit hole,
Yeah, oh.
I actually think that's plausible.
I've been down
think
many-
Avril
many
Lavigne
rabbit
is dead,
holes.
you guys.
And I know this is probably your longest episode ever, but I did want to talk about Project Monarch,
Yeah, definitely.
which is an extension of MK Ultra. My theory on what happened with MK Ultra, which is a very real thing, was a government program under the CIA during the
Yes.
Cold War. What they found was that they couldn't create their super spies.
So this is what they were trying to do with Project Monarch. They're trying to create a super spy, right?
No, MK Ultra. They were
MK
trying
Ultra,
to create the
okay.
super spy. And
What was Project Monarch?
Okay, well, with MK Ultra, the idea was like got like an hour and a half ago.
Like, yeah,
I
so
started
we were trying to
saying
discuss.
what the goal was like some CIA agents could find someone that works at the Soviet embassy, can pull up, grab him, throw him in a van, take him to a room, give him some drugs, do some shit to him, create this other personality, program that personality
Yes, okay.
to collect information. His main personality
Right.
doesn't know that.
So it's like almost like a spy within yourself that you're
Yeah.
not even aware of.
The Manchurian
basically.
Candidate
Yep,
is about
exactly.
that exactly. Then they can throw him back on the street. He has no idea that happened. He goes back to work in the embassy. He's
Yes.
looking at some secret
So-
documents, gets a phone call. Here's the secret word.
And then all of a sudden, it's like a switch
He
has
gets-
been
A
flipped.
switch has been flipped. He collects the information, memorizes it as this other personality, then reverts back, and then they grab him again and they collect the information. That was the goal of MK
Yes,
Ultra.
that was the goal. So
The ultimate
theoretically, you would not know that anything different had happened to this person.
Yes.
You wouldn't know they were working for the other side because they wouldn't even know they were working
Yes.
for the other side. They would seem normal until they get that secret code word
Right.
or what have you.
And that was the goal. And this is kind of my theory now, is if any of this is true, which it might not be. We know that it's true. That was the goal of that program. Officially, it failed and they shut it down.
Right.
What I think may have happened is the program, yes, they did fail. That they were never able to completely achieve what they were trying to achieve with that.
What year was this?
This was in the 60s at this point.
Okay, so there have been decades of
Yes,
psychology.
officially they shut it
Yeah.
down.
Officially.
We talked about like with the remote viewing.
Officially,
in
they shut
the-
it down
in
under
Half-Assed
that
World,
particular
yeah.
name.
But I think what they found was, okay, we can't use it for espionage.
Right.
It's not effective
it wasn't,
for this.
Yeah, it wasn't
But again-
reliable enough.
Because as the curmudgeon, I'm the first one to say, like, I 100% believe, like, we've, like, the highest study and aspect of human culture and government training, and especially on, like, we need to figure this out before the Russians figure this
Right.
out, is we've cracked the human genome, but I feel like the U.S. government and intelligence services, at least on our side, have cracked human behavior and cracked the human
Yes.
brain. right?
But I think what happened when MK Ultra became Project Monarch, which there's strong evidence of actually existing, but not like MK Ultra. We know it's a documented fact. MK Ultra, there's evidence of. It's not completely a fact yet.
Yes.
But maybe the idea is so they couldn't create their super spot. That it just didn't quite work for that. They destroyed a lot of mines along the way trying to do that.
Wasn't reliable.
What they found did work is because the people in the intelligence community were involved with these very kind of elite, wealthy people, and then people like Michael Aquino, these occultists, and a lot of these, like the Rothschilds and these wealthy families that were very closely tied with the government, and they were into occult shit. They found what it was useful for was basically creating sex slaves.
Yes.
Especially creating children that could be programmed to be sex slaves.
They found out how to break them enough
Yes.
to keep them under their control without going
for
too
extended
far.
periods of time.
Which does make sense,
Yes.
especially like you said, Heidi. You and I have a background in financial crimes and detecting, because people that are sending money to each other for sex crimes, they don't talk about like, hey, I'm sending this money for this minor child.
And here's the thing.
And it's back and forth. But at the same time, like, these rings exist.
They exist. And even, it's that thing where, kind of like Chris was saying, they control the victim so much that to the untrained eye, you wouldn't even notice that this person is a victim of the crime because they seem complacent in this crime.
And also, why it's called Project Monarch is because it's generational. Like, once they create one, at some point, they're going to get too old to be desirable. Especially it's known that a lot of these elites are basically pedophiles.
Yes.
Yeah.
They want children or young teenagers.
Like you were talking
but eventually
about
they're going to...
Allegedly, Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, not allegedly with Jeffrey Epstein.
That's not allegedly.
He's convicted.
That's convicted.
He's in prison.
Okay, good.
Once these
they're going to get to a certain
with
age,
alleged
but then
ties to President Trump.
Yes, with alleged.
Yeah, that's a huge quotation marks for that one.
Alleged with half a quotation mark.
You can't hear me grinning.
Okay, but so eventually they're going to grow up and they're groomed into these socialites.
Yeah, they get too
and
old.
These beautiful people, but eventually they're going to get old. They have children.
Yeah.
The children are put immediately through the same programming of abuse to create another one, and then they're going to get older, then they create another one. That's why it's called Monarch, because monarch butterflies have this unique thing that science has yet to completely explain, is that they migrate from as far as Canada to a certain place in Mexico.
A very specific migration pattern.
And Capistrano.
And Capistrano, yes, this very specific region. But the lifespan of a butterfly is so small, one cannot make that journey by itself. It takes at least 3 generations of butterfly, but how do they know how to go there?
Yeah.
There's something ingrained in their DNA.
And when I think we had talked about this before, Heidi, on a previous episode. It's just like we talked about like the emotional impact or trauma.
Yes, we did. Of how that can be inherited through DNA.
Exactly.
And that has been scientifically proven.
Like the entire generation of like
so essentially programming can be passed on
of Jewish Holocaust survivor boomers.
They have PTSD, and it's actually been scientifically proven that it's been inherited. And it's that thing where even though they did not experience the trauma, and it wasn't, they've decided, it wasn't stories, because some of these individuals didn't know.
No, it was mom
didn't
and dad.
hear, maybe were adopted, did not know that these traumas happened to their grandparents, whatever.
Right.
They still, the grandchildren of individuals who dealt with the Holocaust and
via direct genetic inheritance,
they have inherited that PTSD.
Yeah.
Yes, and Project Monarch, what that was specifically a program to organize and try and control and shape that, basically to create a small race of sex slaves and entertainment objects for the elite that are controlling them.
All right.
That's Project Monarch, using the methods of MK Ultra mind control that was developed by the CIA, with its deep ties with these elite families and with these elite corporations. They're all at the same level, and everyone is on their phone but me.
Taking pictures for the Instagram.
I just see phones come out while I'm rambling on. So,
but capture the moment.
That's what Project Monarch is making a system out of it.
Yes.
That it is a natural
it's almost
human
like,
psychological condition, but that's making a system of it specifically to exploit people.
Prolonging. It's like they're making sure that not only
application of an examination of human behavior, and not just human behavior, but intergenerational human behavior.
It's making sure that what they're doing is going to last. So it's like almost like they're doing less work and getting a bigger payout because they found a way to work
create
on one
a being
person,
that's going to
have
exist
it go on to the next. They
for
have to
their
do
pleasure.
less. Exactly, they have to do less work on the next.
There's the whole feeding off of pain and all this, and that is all bullshit. There's no Illuminati in this whole organized thing.
You say?
Well, I mean, I think elements of this are true,
right?
But there's not. I don't think it's a mass, global, organized system.
You like me, like I've been arguing.
I
for
agree
the last
with
hour.
the things you said.
It's
but
just
yes.
like. Fuck me. It's not top down, but at the same time, our military and our governmental
have
structure
been used by these very powerful people.
What did I say? What, 2 hours ago is it now? No. What did I say? What was the first thing I said? What is the best way to hide the truth?
In plain sight.
You just stick it out there. You know the best way to hide something? You stick it where everybody can see it.
It's bottom up. It's ephemeral. It's systemic.
Yes.
And basically, it is a, like, when you talk about, like, the shit that exists, it can very well be explainable through natural systemic
ultimately
flaws
what is the end game?
in our
it is not
society.
World domination.
Yeah.
It is not of these elite people that do exist.
Right.
Maybe they're not organized into a
guess
secret
what?
network.
We want to move to we want to lower the population a little bit, or move to Mars or the moon. Like, what's the future of this? Like, right? Like, in 2 centuries.
That's trying to make more sense of it than it really is. What it really, the end game is they want to get their rocks off.
Yeah.
Is what it's base human.
They want to
their
live
base
their
human
life
desires,
the way they want, which is not acceptable society.
But because
so
they're
make a way
this
for
elite, normal sexual desires aren't enough for them anymore.
I just
want to
have orgies 24/7. Like,
and,
that's
and that's part of it.
Yeah.
But at some point they get bored with that, and it needs. Then it goes on to snuff films.
How do you amplify
and then it goes on
after
to
you get to that? Right. Like,
creating an entire generation of sex slaves.
Like, imagine your biggest fantasy, or imagine like your most ambitious epic fantasy, and
especially if you're at work. Imagine it. I want you to really get into it.
Right, and then imagine getting bored with that after 2 weeks, and then where do you go from there?
Yes, that's really what this is about.
Yeah,
and they're wealthy and powerful enough to actually do it.
Because there's a human neurological phenomenon called semantic satiation, and that's when you get bored with the thing that is entertaining to you right now.
Well, I think a lot of people, and that's kind of a privilege thing. And the reason it's a privilege thing is, let's say your favorite thing in the whole wide world. Let's do the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory bullshit.
Okay.
Let's say you really like a chocolate bar, but you're poor, like Charlie, and you can't afford one. It's a big fucking deal every time you get a chocolate bar.
Right.
Versus the other kids that can afford to buy one every day, they're just like, you got a chocolate bar? Well, I want a super scrumdiddlyumptious bar. That's what I want. Now I want two. Like, no, now I want the new thing. Oh,
now
put
it,
blend it together. I mean, that's how it starts, right? You start with a Wonka bar. You end up.
It's a slippery slope from chocolate
but it's that
to
thing where
pedophilia rings.
And Veruca Salt rolled away.
It's a privilege thing, and it's something that a lot of people, yes, there's pedophiles out there, that we're not saying that that's an acquired thing. It's just that it's these people that have power and money, and they feel that they are entitled to something.
And
then there are also people that
amplify and accelerate
in politics and in Hollywood, like seeking fame. People that seek power, that are just in their person, or in these families. These wealthy, going back generations, families,
very
they grow
privileged.
Up that way.
They think they can have whatever they want.
They expect the power, and so the sex thing is so much more about the power, that like they can have this thing that is
bad,
so taboo in society, but they can do it, and they can keep it secret, and they can do all this because they can.
And guess what?
And that's something they get
now.
Off of.
Some of that mask is being ripped off.
I think just because of technology, the world is changing, and
shared experience. And guess what? Like the believability hasn't been from like, well, have I heard 2 men talk about Harvey Weinstein? No, it's been women after women plus an audiophile. And guess what? Like Kevin Spacey. I don't even know if someone specifically came out about Kevin Spacey. It was just news reporting, and it was just like, here's 5 sources that said, here's in 1995, he invited me into a limo. He harassed me on the set of House of Cards. It was all just reporting. It was all just like, hey, here's awareness where that didn't exist. The infrastructure for us to be aware of that didn't exist. right? So I think that with the mask being ripped off of this, it lends a little bit of credulity to what you're talking about, where it talks about like there's a systemic like sickness and infrastructure, and people talk about like Illuminati as the label for it, but at the same time, we're making strides in like revealing the inner workings of that infrastructure and sickness. Because I honestly think like, yeah, it's a power structure, it's a gatekeeping hierarchy. But we're getting better as a world culture, and the future looks brighter than it did yesterday.
To us, it looks brighter.
Yeah, than it did yesterday.
That's what the poor Illuminati.
Yeah.
All right. Well, to me, I feel like wrapping up. I'm like, this has been an episode of Campfire Curmudgeon, but I don't want to deny you guys a chance to
plug some shit or
no.
Okay.
Chris and I have a podcast called Film Bar Presents, if you're local to Phoenix.
Or if you're not, it's still a good show.
Yeah, or if you're planning on visiting Phoenix.
Or if not, it's just a good show if you like us. Well, it's not
just
local to Phoenix.
A good
if
show.
you like film, then it's a fun show to listen to.
We did have some fun conversations that are worth listening to.
Film and filmmaking and film culture.
Film Bar Presents. You can find us online at filmbarpresents.com or on our Facebook at Film Bar, or just by searching Film Bar Presents. Heidi and I, you can find us at campfirecurmudgeon.com. Beyond that,
you can find me at No Heidi Only Zool on Instagram. Search the same thing. You can find my blog, and keep an eye out soon. You'll see my solo podcast.
And the John Carpencast, which is over now, which Nick and I did. Every film of John Carpenter we review with a special guest.
I've listened to quite a few with the movies that I've never seen, and they were still very enjoyable.
It's good to hear.
That's a healthy endorsement.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Heidi.
That's thejohncarpencast.com and Facebook and all.
Or just search John
all the
Carpencast.
things.
Yep. Thank you for listening, and keep the campfire burning.
Bye.
Bye. Welcome to Campfire Curmudgeon Podcast Supplemental.
Is this going to be another episode, or is it going to be like tacked on to...
No.
This is the Oops edition.
Yeah. Welcome to Campfire Curmudgeon Sober Supplemental.
Yeah.
For the episode that you just listened to, Illuminati. We are adding to the episode so that you have a chance to actually hear what our guest has to say. Chris, welcome back.
Thank you.
Co-host?
Yes, Nicholas.
Is there some explanation?
Would you like me to say my name?
Yes, I just want you to say your name.
Oh, okay. My name is Heidi, but I'm pretty sure they know that.
Okay. Chris, before I went on a rant repeating myself multiple instances and was reading Latin badly off of a dollar bill, you were trying to explain what it is the Illuminati is. Or what didn't we get covered? It was obviously a lot, but
something I think we didn't really get to is the elite families that supposedly control the world, and this is the core of the whole Illuminati, which will tie into Hollywood. But the actual Illuminati are these bloodlines that go back. They date their lineage back to ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, and some, if you want to get really crazy, if that's not crazy enough, you can go even deeper with it, and they have alien blood. There are there's the Anunnaki, that are these superior beings that came to Earth. This is now into ancient astronaut theory, that kind of enslaved the ape-like creatures that were living on Earth. And they were these highly intelligent beings that made the slave race to give them gold, because gold is what they use to power their spaceships or some shit. And most of the ancient cultures and the ancient gods are... Again, Nick is making a face at me like I'm trying to convince him.
No,
this is
very
bullshit.
Frustrated with you right now.
No, I'm not. Go.
But a lot of the ancient, especially the ancient Egyptians, people that are into this theory love ancient Egyptian
about, like,
shit.
The shape of their heads and all that.
Yeah, that's
stuff.
Supposedly a thing, like the skulls in Peru and all that, and the shape, the kind of the hats of the ancient Egyptians and stuff that sort of elongate the shape of their heads. They're saying they're trying to emulate these actual beings that came down and had that shaped head. But basically they terraformed the Earth and well, not terraformed, I forget what the word is, but they created humanity by genetically engineering through a combination of science and magic, which to them is just science, but to us would look like magic.
It's magic.
And the pyramids, all those things were built worshiping the Anunnaki. And they became, they say some of the first pharaohs and the leaders were actual Anunnaki, but over the years, it became, instead of purely Anunnaki, they bred with humans and created these royal families, basically, including the British royal families are the most famous ones. And I don't remember the exact list, but there's one author that dialed it down to like 13 or 14 families, that including the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, that date their lineage back.
Powerful families, yep.
Yeah, and then their connections to all kinds of presidents and world leaders and business leaders. Apparently, every president is like a second, or not second, but a fifth or sixth cousin of even like Obama and Bush are related on some level, and all these powerful people just keep themselves in power. Elite families that run the world through banking, and then when you get into the banking thing, that's when we touched on it. But when you really look into this stuff, when the word Zionism shows up, it's like,
I was gonna say, this sounds awfully close to like, it's like when people accuse David Icke of being a anti-Semite,
right?
Because they think that he says lizard people is actually just code for Jews.
Yeah, David Icke is a former British.
He's like, no, really, they're lizard people.
And I believe he thinks they are lizard. Like
he probably does.
He does, yeah. But then all these whites. For people that don't know, David Icke was a British footballer in the 70s, a big, huge star athlete who then had some kind of breakdown, decided he was Jesus for a little while, and then he became this big-time conspiracy theorist, believed that these bloodlines are actually reptilian aliens that are controlling our society, basically to eat us, like literally eat people.
That freaks me out so bad. Like, I'm not saying I necessarily believe it, but every time people start talking about it, I'm just like, no, I don't want to get eaten of all the things.
You know what that would necessitate, though? What
would that necessitate?
They own the funeral industry.
Hey, maybe they do.
And they do. They own every industry.
I mean, clever.
But because David Icke has built up this system of how they control the media and politics and banking, a lot of white supremacists and anti-Semites have gone on and is like, oh, I see what he's doing. Yeah. He's saying it's these aliens, but it really means is Jews. And
bankers are lizards, right? We get what you're saying, David.
Yeah. Although David Icke is saying, no, they're lizards. Like, if you see interviews with him, he's adamant.
Well, there are some people that unfortunately do take the Zionist thing to be like, yes, the alien overlord Jews. And you're like, wait, what?
There's a whole, I didn't...
Hold up.
Alien, plausible. Overlord, sure, why not? Humanity's pretty stupid. Jews, oh my god, you just stepped too far.
There used to be a lady like that where I worked. She'd come in and tell us all of these alien theories, and we thought it was really funny at first. And then she was like, can you make me some copies of these documents? We're like, okay, sure. Actually, no, we're going to pass. It was just like the Jews are aliens that are eating us and controlling everything so they can murder us all. And we were just like, actually, you can take these and go.
Wow.
You can take these back.
But that's going down the really alien and ancient culture kind of...
The kooky rabbit hole.
The really kooky rabbit hole. I mean,
I don't know if that's kooky so much as just the racist rabbit hole.
Right. It's like, well, you're choosing to be irrational, and then also you're adding a little dollop of hate on top of it.
Yeah.
But then you do have these incredibly wealthy families that do have enormous power and influence and wealth.
Right.
Which is why they have power and influence, because they have wealth in the world that go back generations. And they have these enormous parties where there is a lot of, like, you can go online and find pictures from
China, Bohemian Grove.
Yeah.
Bohemian Grove. Yes. I don't think we talked about Bohemian Grove.
No, we did not.
Okay, well, we can start there. Yeah. So Bohemian Grove is a park in Northern California with heavy security, where once a year they have this enormous celebration, basically.
The elite of the elite.
Of the elite of the elite.
Yep.
These are presidents go there.
Elite.
Politicians, business leaders, people, media conglomerates. They meet in this wooded area, and supposedly there's all kinds of human sacrifice. There's actual human sacrifice.
Children sacrifices.
Really, they're probably just fucking boys.
Or orgies.
Yeah. And it's just a big sex thing.
Well, a lot of people have the theory that they make powerful people do bad things so that they can then control them and be like, well, we do have that video of you fucking that boy, so...
Yes, we did talk about that a little bit. But yeah, but that is a thing that happens at Bohemian Grove, allegedly.
Allegedly. Stop.
But there are some weird stuff at Bohemian Grove because their opening night ceremony is this very Masonic pageant where that's performed in front of like a 30, 40...
a bull's head. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's like a 30, 40-foot wooden owl that it's all performed in front of, which they say is the ancient god Moloch, who is known for child sacrifice. They would sacrifice children to Moloch.
M-O-L-O-C-H.
M-O-L-O-C-H, yes. Moloch.
Even just the theatrics of it, it's very like ritualistic. Even just the very act of doing something so performative with some sort of intention behind it has a lot of like magical properties behind it, if you think about it. Even
and
if
in
they're
the
not
ceremony,
actually sacrificing anything.
In the ceremony, they actually do burn an effigy of a person.
Yes, they do.
Ritualistically, and you can look this up too. Alex Jones, the crazy wacko conspiracy theorist, he and this other guy, who's also a conspiracy theorist, but maybe a little more sensible, if there's such a thing.
If he's friends with Alex Jones, I don't know. But
he's not really friends with Alex Jones, because
right.
Alex Jones, the two of them snuck into Bohemian Grove and actually did get video footage of the ceremony. Alex Jones maintains that, yes, human sacrifice was happening. They have it. They recorded the ceremony like hiding in the bushes, and you can find this on YouTube. And when they burn the body of the guy, you hear this scream, which is probably someone next to a microphone because it's a fucking play.
Yeah.
But he maintains that, no, there was a guy inside that effigy that they burned as part of the sacrifice. And he has this whole story. You can find it online, ranting about it. The other guy who was there with him says, like, no, it was just a bunch of fucking rich old men that he said they look like Mr. Burns.
Right, it's like
he's standing around.
It's like Ivy League type of like Skull and Bones, like George Bush, John Kerry, like frat groups. And guess what happens when we turn old? Right, we're not in college. We can't binge drink. Like,
well, I'm sure there's still some of that too.
Right.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's all kinds of drinking and drugs.
It doesn't have to have.
They just indulge themselves in different ways.
Well, but it does too have, like I said, it has a purpose. Even if they're not actually sacrificing, getting that many people together in one group with similar intents and watching and participating in the performance, it does have a lot of power behind it. It's kind of interesting to think about it that way. So it's not hard to see why people jump to Illuminati.
There is an occult element to it, definitely. Even if they don't literally believe in the magic of the occult.
Yeah, even if they don't know.
through the ritualism. And then you see these parties that, it was either the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers, but I'm sure both families were represented at these parties in the 70s, where they have these weird masks and like eyes wide shut kind of shit. Like,
eyes wide shut.
That they really do have these parties. We don't see the orgy side of it. That probably happens too, but they do have these parties where they have these very ornate.
Well, that has a very storied history too of wearing masks at parties. Like masquerade parties were really big at different times in history.
In Venice, when there was like. Anyone who was...
They're still very popular in Venice to this day,
there's a whole subculture, And just the idea of going to a party and wearing a mask, and then you can do all, the aristocracy had to put on this higher airs of nobility and things, but then when they just wanted to be debaucherous and fucked up, they would go to these parties that were still very ornate and fancy, but they were wearing masks so they could just cut loose and not be themselves. And they were very secretive because they couldn't let the common people know that they're just as filthy and fucked up as they are.
Right. It's like the episode of Review when he goes to the orgy, and he's just like king of the orgy, and he takes off his mask, and everyone's like, he's hideous.
Sad.
Like, kick him out, and then he gets kicked out of the orgy.
Yeah.
Well, that's depressing.
Yeah.
And there are orgies, and there are things that happening. We live in Phoenix. That's kind of. Phoenix is sort of known for being a center of that kind of activity. People take vacations here for swingers parties.
Yeah, we used to be like a real big swingers destination.
Nick looks very surprised, but Phoenix has a reputation and surrounding area.
Yeah, it's not as popular as it used to be. I would say even like 5 years ago it was bigger.
Yeah, I moved here 6 years ago.
I think it just got spread out more because of the internet. People were able to
also the 2008 housing market crash.
Right.
Well, and
that could contribute.
Yeah, that did. They wanted to actually film a lot of porn here, but it's illegal to film a porn here in Arizona.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that.
It is, yeah.
Shit.
My friend and I found that out. We were like, let's look this up for funsies.
But yeah, apparently, if you at these parties, which I think do happen, and there are orgies at these parties, because that's a long
Paradise Valley, go up and like everything's gated.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Like, okay,
That's where the parties are happening.
I was gonna say I used to have a neighbor who worked security at one of the gated communities up there, where one of the Phoenix Suns basketball players lived.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember which player. He was one of the stars of the Phoenix Suns, and he's going through a divorce. And his ex-wife stopped by while he had a date over at the house, and my buddy neighbor, the security guy, was like, "I can't let you." And he's like, "I had to tell this high-profile NBA player's like newly estranged wife, who's just like ready to cause a domestic incident.
Just
walk away."
And it's in the same neighborhood where like Alice Cooper and Muhammad Ali used to live. Yeah.
Again, same neighborhood. Sports stars, rock stars. They're all involved in this thing. They're just the public face, allegedly. Again.
Allegedly.
But a big part of what it is apparently is child abuse.
Okay.
Because again, we talked about in the whatever of the episode ends up getting aired.
See, here's where it goes from fun to like not fun.
Yes, it does.
I mean,
and the idea that they feed off of negative energy. That's why they create the world. Why they create wars. Why they create famine. All these things is to create negative energy, which they feed on. Mm-hmm. Literally feed.
And what do they use the negative energy for? Just to sustain themselves, or for their own purposes?
Both. To sustain themselves, because it's a kind of high that only they can experience.
And sustain in the cycle of violence.
I wish I could remember the name of the drug. There's allegedly a drug that you can draw from during the sacrifice when the body is so...
Adrenaline?
Yeah, just pumped with adrenaline, but it's a certain mixture of adrenaline and blood that is with a syringe withdrawn from the person before they're killed. Uh-huh. And they synthesize it. I don't know about synthesize it, but they process it and inject it. And apparently it is the most powerful drug. There's actually a funny scene in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas where they try it. Adrenal. I forget what the word is. But there's an actual name for it, where Hunter S. Thompson shoots up Raoul Duke, his character, because his lawyer happened to find one because he was out of cash.
Right.
Found the guy who traded it for him.
And he's like freaking out, and he's like, "Back off, I am Ahab." Like, and he's like, hit me in the head at the peak when White Rabbit peaks. Like,
apparently Hunter S. Thompson is involved with the Illuminati. Which sounds weird because he would be like the last guy you would expect.
He's more of an iconoclast.
Yeah. But there's a story that one of the children that was involved in the Franklin cover-up, which is a whole other issue, but that it was a big child sex scandal. Basically, there was this. This was the. Was it in Omaha? It was somewhere in the mid. It was.
I don't think.
I think it was Kansas City, but it was somewhere in the Midwest. Different places for use, taking children. From these orphanages, basically they were basically just farms for children that were then trafficked to different places for use by politicians, and this was real. This happened, But then it gets into, because some of the children that were involved in this got very fucked up, obviously, afterward, because they were being used as playthings.
See, here's where I get the curmudgeon, because I'm like, oh, this is all fun, and isn't it kind of neat? And like, the world's chaos, and maybe there's some sort of dark order to it. And then it's like, haha, isn't that kind of fun to think about? Like, maybe there is a group, and if there is, can I join it? And then it's like, oh, but there's also kid fucking.
Yeah, but there were convictions and things in this case. This was a real thing.
But a lot of people still don't think that it's real. If you talk about this,
because the FBI refused to. The FBI would lose evidence because some of the people involved were wealthy. Some of the biggest politicians in the country were involved.
And I'm pretty sure that some people in the FBI were also accused of being involved with this.
And then, but apparently these kids were being flown out to Washington, flown out to Bohemian Grove specifically. And one of them tells a story of being involved in a snuff film, which that's another popular thing with them, snuff films.
And then there's Dennis Hastert, not allegedly, was
convicted.
Was the Speaker of the House. He was the third in line to the presidency during the Bush administration, and he's convicted in jail.
Jeffrey Epstein, who was Donald Trump's best friend and business partner, and also convicted of child molestation and basically financing a child sex ring, which Donald Trump was also implicated
allegedly
was right there with him along the whole
thing. Allegedly
yeah.
on this one.
But he was able to lawyer up faster
yeah.
and has been fighting it ever since this happened in the 90s. And so there are very real things that happen like this.
Yeah.
But they get crazier, like to go back to Hunter S. Thompson connection. There's this one of the victims of the Franklin cover-up who was just this kind of drug addict, mentally ill, very damaged young man. Claims that he was in had to participate in a snuff film,
yes.
where basically, and this is going to get really bad, so if you're a little squeamish, you don't want to hear this. Fast forward through.
This episode is definitely going to have some content warnings.
Apparently in the snuff film that he participated in, he was forced to fuck another boy, and these were children. And then at one point, on camera, the other boy is killed, has his head blown off on camera, as a bunch of men are watching this. These two boys, and then he is still forced to.
No, this was in Omaha, Nebraska.
Omaha, Nebraska. There you
go.
Yep.
I did
and
not
that from
this, my hometown.
His hometown. I'm surprised you didn't know. Yeah, this was in the 80s.
Oh, 88.
But I feel like it's really surprising.
Nebraska's Franklin Community Federal Credit Union. Wow.
Yeah.
There was this guy that ran the credit union that basically organized these big parties, and he was a big, muckety muck in the Republican Party and things. And there's some Republican National Convention where he sings the national anthem, and that's
I could see that.
Yeah,
I mean, there's been people that are been on stage at the RNC that are that are in jail,
and it wasn't just Republican too. He was handling mostly. It sounded like a Washington side of things, but these kinds of things exist in Hollywood,
right.
Wall Street, anywhere where there's money and power. There are people like this that orchestrate these rings.
I was going to interrupt, but I wanted to let you finish with that part because it was one of those things where it's yeah, Jared from Subway, right? Jared Fogle.
Oh, I saw that coming.
Well, excuse me. He probably, when he was just a schmuck, didn't have any means or opportunity to engage in that.
I'm sure he did, but not at the same level.
Not at the same level, but when you get somebody who's rich, it's then your world opens up. Your options opened up.
Is that a conspiracy of silence?
Yeah, I was like, why is my phone so loud? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I just saw the picture.
It's making a thud.
Which, if you want to know more about the Franklin cover-up, it's like a whole story on its own, so we won't go that deep into it. But there's a great documentary called
The Conspiracy of Silence. It's a really good one, but the thing that I find so interesting, if you go on the Wikipedia for the Franklin cover-up, it's very small.
Yeah, there's very little on it on Wikipedia.
Where is all of this information? I mean, there's very little on it.
There's a book written by a very extensive book written by a guy. I think he was a congressman or a senator even, but he was a high-powered lawyer in Omaha who was the guy that was leading the charge. He was kind of the hero of the story, trying to expose this and being. If you could find his name,
is this the book, the Franklin cover-up?
John DeCamp, yes.
John DeCamp.
No,
he was kind of leading the charge, and something happened here. We need to. And then do something about this. This is fucking serious, and got met with obstructions everywhere. And he wrote a very large book that's kind of the most comprehensive thing.
That actually has a lot of information.
Yes.
But that's why when people talk about Illuminati and stuff and all this crazy stuff, it's very easy to roll your eyes. But it's people don't even believe that this happened. This happened, and it's hard to find information on it.
There's documented facts that this happened. And
so when people make other allegations about maybe people in positions of power, trying to do some sort of ritual or attempting to make people sad so they can feed off of this energy and make people miserable. I can't negate that so easily because it's if something this horrific that just seems like bullshit, if this actually happened, then some of the other kooky stuff that our curmudgeon over there would roll his eyes at. It's kind of harder to roll your eyes because you're maybe.
Yeah, because I think it does happen. It's not literal magic. It's just really fucked up people that have the power to be really fucked up and get away with it.
And then they find others that are in their weight class, right? Of status and
then they have this power over everyone else because they have these secrets and these they go to these parties, and if you get invited to this party and because you're ambitious and in the Hollywood sense you want that fame and fortune, you're so driven for that toward that you're willing to do almost anything, and then they kind of ease you into these parties, and there's the party and then there's the after party, and then at the after party there's the back room that if you're really special maybe they will let you into the back room, and then there's the other room behind that, and And those things happen. I mean, those things are very
Horrible
real. It's
things.
just,
Yeah.
I mean, are they really, sacrificing goats back there?
Jack Nicholson's hot tub.
Yes, and Jack Nicholson's hot tub in the 70s. Like, what, the things it must have seen.
So we've got kind of like, we dove kind of deep here into like the darker side of this. Is there anything like kind of fun or kooky
Or
that you
hokey,
can,
or
that you can
whimsical?
bring up to kind of bring us back around?
Okay, well, something that's been really interesting in the last, 5 years maybe, is how the hip-hop industry has embraced Illuminati symbolism.
Yeah, we were talking about
that was the thing I didn't get to talk to. Like, after the last recording, I was like, oh, fuck, I didn't even bring up that. People like Kanye West and Jay-Z and Beyonce and other pop stars that kind of work in that milieu have kind of really embraced the Illuminati imagery, the idea that they're in the Illuminati and they're putting on these symbols. You see the all-seeing eye and the...
It's almost that thing of like, just tell the truth and have it be so ridiculous that nobody believes you.
Mm-hmm.
You almost wonder, they're like,
Hiding
yeah,
in
I'm in the
plain sight.
Illuminati.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, shit, maybe they are. Like, maybe we should take that seriously.
But also I think an element of it is interesting that it came out of the hip-hop world.
Very interesting.
Which is a world because generally when we think of the Illuminati, there are these very wealthy white families.
Yeah, I was like, you think of old white dudes.
Yeah, old white dudes, old conservative white dudes. And then you have the people in the black community that achieved fame and fortune. And it's kind of a ironic fuck you to the old white dudes. It's like, oh no, we're Illuminati too.
Yeah, we're actually Illuminati too. What are you going to do about it? We're busted into your club, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a large element of it. It's kind of just a fuck you to the establishment. That
so
look,
you don't
we got,
think that it's serious? Like you think it's more of just like a,
I don't think
sure,
it's
you're Illuminati, so am I. You don't think it's
and it can
serious?
be cool imagery. If you look at some of these music videos,
Yeah.
they hire really great artists to put, costume designers and set decorators and cinematographers to make these really cool images out of this.
Or do you think that maybe it's like a way that they're saying like, oh yeah, you use, your magic and your rituals, like, well, we found a way to do it too. So like, we're Illuminati too. Look, we're rich. We did something to get here. Like maybe they didn't do the same thing. Maybe they didn't do such awful things, but maybe they have their own, ritual magic or whatever that they're taking part in to boost their fame, and they're kind of throwing it back in their face like, yeah, we got our own.
I think that's what it is, but then it just became kind of a fad, basically, in pop music, and now you see it in all kinds of music videos and just all the imagery of, especially the idea that, and all of this is just driving the conspiracy theorists even further.
Oh my God.
Because then they point at the music videos and like, look, it's
like,
right
look,
there, see it?
Well, especially the rapper, like, I don't know how you do his name, but it's
How you do his name?
how you say his name. It's B.O.B. B.O.B. He's a flat earther. He's the flat earther.
Oh, is this that guy you showed me?
No. This is actually not him. That guy.
Unfortunately, there's more than one flat earther.
So
that's also a rapper.
No. Yeah. That guy is a flat earther who's like, I made a YouTube rap. What I'm talking about is an actual rap artist who also promotes like.
What does he look like?
I don't know.
Okay.
It'll be great for our listeners for me to look that up.
We'll describe him. He's wearing shoes.
He's hatless.
I can put
Repeat hatless.
I'll put a picture on our Instagram.
But like we talked about before, Project Monarch.
Yes, we did.
And the idea of brainwashing young women and young men to be these kind of virginal pop idols, then hypersexualizing them and then shaming them in public culture as a form of ritual sacrifice. You see lots of elements of that in, we talked about Katy Perry and Miley Cyrus, Britney Spears, and Taylor Swift, I think, has a new video out that's very steeped in that kind of occult imagery and the idea that you see them in cages, and this is something
they're brainwashing our children.
In conspiracy lore, these elite families apparently to their own children do this. Like there's a system, like even though they can give them everything in the world that they want or could need, they still the idea is they put them through this very horrific, rigorous system of abuse to cause the Project Monarch fracturing of the psyche so that they can appear on the surface to be these very rich, blue blood, wealthy people, but then they have these depraved, ritualistic altars that exist within their mind, and they're raised this way, they're programmed this way, that you see them, at fancy dinner parties in the best clothes, but then they go back and they're thrown in a cage in a dungeon that they have beneath the mansion. And that's a big part of the idea of this kind of conspiracy lore.
It just reminds me of Tipper Gore and the PMRC, the Parents Musical Research Council or something.
What?
Frank Zappa. Basically,
Nope.
Tipper Gore and
This was late 80s, early 90s.
They're the ones who got the fucking like parental advisory stickers on all the music.
Thing.
Like they were like, the music is ruining the children's minds, and like they started a whole purity crusade.
You know, it's funny because you don't really see those stickers as much anymore. I feel like,
No.
like who even do they even still do that?
Well, with the internet and stuff, like you can find it.
Well,
It's
there's
not-
iTunes and then there's explicit.
Yeah, but
you
I
can
mean,
buy clean and
I guess a
explicit
lot of the
versions
bands I
them.
listen to aren't like U.S. bands,
Right.
So, but I don't
Wouldn't
know.
fall under that.
Yeah,
Back in the day when people actually went and like bought CDs and
Yes.
stuff.
I still buy CDs.
Yep, I do
I
too.
just
but
I don't
mean,
know the last time I saw something on one of my
But
CDs.
have you
back
been-
when that was the only way you
But
got
have you been
music
into like
was-
music stores, or are you just
Yeah.
like Walmart? Because Walmart just sells the clean version of it.
No.
Right?
Like they pop into my Zia records.
Yeah, Bob, B.O.B., is an outspoken conspiracy theorist. He believes the Earth is flat, the moon landing was
no.
fake, 9/11
Does he
was an
believe that the
inside
moon
job.
is also hollow?
The New World Order will be led by the Illuminati, and celebrity
shit.
cloning is administered by the U.S. government.
So is somebody
Yeah, I've
going to
heard
clone
that, yeah.
him because now he's a celebrity? Is he going to be part of this conspiracy
Stanley
theory?
Kubrick. They say Stanley Kubrick was killed by the Illuminati because of Eyes Wide Shut.
Really?
There's also a story that
No, never mind that. I remember I was in my Kubrick phase right around that time.
Right.
I watched Clockwork Orange for the first time the day he died.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was like, oh, he was ailing from cancer or whatever anyways. He had been that for a while.
Yeah. He was an out-of-shape 70-something man. Like,
It was British.
He wasn't British.
No. Oh, no, he was born in Brooklyn. But
he moved to England.
He was an expat.
He was someone that was also afraid to fly.
Right.
And basically moved to England and never came back.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's
maybe
like,
not
"I'm
never,
stuck
but
here
he's
now."
just like, I'm just going to stay here.
Yeah, they imported palm trees to shoot Full Metal Jacket in
Jacket, yeah.
England
Mm-hmm.
rather than like shooting it anywhere
I mean, I think
else.
those fuckers will grow anywhere.
Yeah.
I can't kill mine. Who wants some free palm trees?
But the story is Stanley Kubrick, after 2001: A Space Odyssey was in development, that the effects were so impressive to the Illuminati that also controlled NASA and all that he was hired to fake the moon landing. That
Sorry.
all that footage is actually a Stanley Kubrick production, and he was brought
Nicholas,
into
stop
these.
fidgeting.
And he was brought into these Illuminati circles where they have these parties with these pedophile sex rings and all these things. And apparently when he made Eyes Wide Shut, he was going to finally expose it to the world.
Uh-huh.
And also, there's the kooky documentary Room 237,
Yes.
that in The Shining, he has lots of clues and symbols.
Yes.
And throughout his
That he
body of
leaves.
work since then, that he's hinting at this was happening.
He admits to the moon landing through the imagery and symbolism
Yes,
of The
the
Shining.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there is some of it,
Some
most
of
of
it,
it is
yeah.
absolute
It's like-
bullshit.
I know. I love
I
that
watched
movie.
that.
I love the movie because I love this crazy conspiracy
it's
shit.
It's like a
but-
pick and choose of like, oh, I believe that, and then it's like, what's your breaking point? This is going to.
But there are some interesting things, like how in one scene Danny Torrance is wearing a sweater that is Apollo 11.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And
yeah.
he's sitting on that carpet that has
That
like
looks
kind of
like-
that tarmac
Yeah.
type shape when he's playing with these trucks that are going around the shape that looks like when the shuttle or the rocket.
Challenger exploded.
But I mean, if people
no,
had a
Apollo 11.
conspiracy theory about me, you bet I'd fuck with them. If I was a director, I'd be like,
Yeah.
so we're
Yeah.
going to put some stuff in here to make some people think I'm trying to tell them something.
And apparently, Eyes Wide Shut. They
Just hold this white rose.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about
it.
And they say the film we got as Eyes Wide Shut is not the film Kubrick intended. He died before, and this is discounted by a lot of people that were
No,
actually involved in the production.
Sidney Pollack, director in his own right,
Yeah.
co-starred in Eyes Wide Shut. He has a couple small scenes.
Although, just a weird bit of trivia, do you know who was originally cast in that part?
Who?
Woody Allen.
Oh. But Sidney Pollack has said, like, no, he made the movie he wanted to make
Yes,
because
I believe he did.
He did the Kubrick thing that he does. He's like, I'm going to film 90 takes of the same
It
scene.
took him 4 years
Yeah.
to make that movie. I don't know if the record's been broken since, but it's considered like the longest in production, consistently in production movie ever made
because he just kept filming takes and takes.
There were
and
like
takes.
Jennifer Jason Leigh had a major role in the film
Really?
that she ended up getting cut from because like a year later he wanted to shoot a new scene with her,
Yeah.
and she was on like contract directed the 3 other movies.
Moved on.
And so he had to recast the part and reshoot the earlier scenes that he had shot with her.
Yeah.
And this kept going on.
Was that the
for
Lily
4 years.
Sobieski character?
No.
Because it feels like she's in the movie so little, and it's like, well, if you're making this movie for 4 years.
No, it was a different. I don't remember specifically who it was. It wasn't that character, but
Okay.
that is a character. What they say, the Kubrick version that he intended, that he didn't get to make, dealt with the specifically with the pedophilia cults.
Okay.
And in Hollywood and in just the Illuminati in general, because there's not much about. There's like these, orgies and these sex parties, Illuminati sex parties, but pedophilia hasn't really come up much, except for the Lily Sobieski character, who's being pimped out by her father to these wealthy men as a prostitute, basically, a sex worker.
And then, that movie came out in 2000?
99.
99? Yeah. And then it's like 18 years later, the shoe drops.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. But there are some people that make the connection, however dubious. Like at the end of the movie that takes place in a toy store.
Yeah.
How the daughter of Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman's characters is seen in front of a pile of teddy bears, a pyramid of teddy bears. Go back to the ancient Egyptian imagery, and then how the teddy bear became an internet meme among pedophiles as a pedo bear.
Pedo bear. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it was also well chronicled that in addition to the long production of it, like the Church of Scientology, according to Alex Gibney's documentary Going Clear, they basically had full-time staff in London, in England.
Oh yes, yeah. That's common on Tom Cruise.
Sole mission was to break up their marriage.
No, yeah, and Tom Cruise, even in on the set of War of the Worlds, he had a huge falling out with Steven Spielberg because he brought in Scientology booths that were set up because it was a huge production. Hundreds of people are on this big blockbuster movie.
To try to get people to join.
Yeah, there were so many extras and crew members just around.
Yeah.
So Tom Cruise had Scientology booths
kiosks,
set up. Yeah, kiosks to have you heard about Scientology? And when
can you imagine
Spielberg
if you went
found
to
out,
work,
he was furious.
Yeah, can you imagine going to work and then having
someone trying to convert
you to just random religions? Like, have you heard about Mormonism? Oh no, excuse me. Have you heard about Scientology? Wait, over here.
Is this the airport from Airplane?
Yeah,
basically, yeah. And that's just not a good work. That's a hostile work environment.
Yeah, you're just I'm here to do my job.
So yeah, Spielberg was furious, and it shut down production for a little while.
Yeah,
because they had such a huge falling out. But that's the Kubrick connection, that he was trying to expose this whole conspiracy. There's also his involvement with.
And then Spielberg picked up the remnants of his last film.
Yes, then bringing in Spielberg. Yeah, around that same time.
Is that your favorite conspiracy theory?
I find it fascinating. A favorite is kind of a hard word to because this is fucking.
I know.
It deals with pedophilia and this fucking
terrible.
crazy.
When it gets into fun,
but do you have a fun favorite? Would this be your favorite? Ooh, kind of weird, or do you have?
Yeah, I think this is the one that. Just being such a huge fan of Kubrick, and also when you hear these, I think his name is Jay Weidner, is a guy that's really pushing. He wrote a book about this whole thing, and poking holes in his story because. Being such a huge Kubrick fan and a film fan, I know about the history of his filmography, and there's some very easy holes to poke if you just know.
This is because of this. You're actually,
there's this whole other story that's well documented.
You're it's very well documented. We know
way.
this.
Yeah. And Jay Weidner too. This was what he's known for best. Is this Kubrick conspiracy thing, and he's gone on conspiracy podcasts and radio shows about it. He wrote another book about alchemy, and that's another thing he says, that Kubrick was an alchemist and used the medium of cinema as a form of medieval alchemy, basically.
Alchemy, for people that don't know, it's kind of mixing magic with science.
Yes.
So
Kubrick found a way through cinema to bring that into the 20th century. And then he has another book about other films that are and with Kubrick, because he was kind of a reclusive character, and it's easy to put, and his movies are so detailed, and so he was so obsessive about it.
You can see whatever you want in something with that much. That color is because of this. You can almost believe
that could be true of Kubrick. But then he wrote another book about other movies that are works of alchemy. And it'd be things like, it'd be things like, I heard him on I think it was Red Ice Radio, that a conspiracy podcast from Norway or something, and he was talking about this Kubrick stuff, and this is where I first really heard him talking about it in this whole story. And then he was talking about his other book, the alchemy one. He's like, okay, like what the hosts are asking, like, what movies are these other alchemy ones? And he's like, well, like Titanic. And like, okay.
Do you mean metallurgy?
No, Titanic, because we're living in a society that can't sustain. We think it's unsinkable, but the Titanic sunk.
I see.
Sunk, and then
that was shoddy workmanship.
It's like, what's another one? And it's like Terminator. Like, okay, why a Terminator? Because that could happen. The machines could rise, and
so that's alchemy.
So that's alchemy. Yeah, yes.
I don't think they understand what alchemy is.
Yeah, and so his whole he was pulling in all these threads for the Kubrick thing that was actually crazy but fascinating. And then his other, I think he put all his eggs in one basket.
Yeah, and then it's like, I'm going to say the same bullshit. I'm just going to call it alchemy now.
And then even the hosts were just like, oh,
he's like, I heard of alchemy once in passing, and now I'm just going to use it for everything and pretend I know what it means.
Yeah, it's like it almost is like what Slavoj Zizek thinks filmmakers' intentions are. If you watch his documentaries on film theory, and one of them is called The Pervert's Guide to Ideology.
Yeah. And
I think one of them he uses the movie Jaws to talk about I can't even fucking remember. It was like the downfall of America. Or something.
Just equates things that you're just like, how
philosophically. I'm like, it's not that global. It's a blockbuster movie. Sure, it's a little deeper than most blockbuster movies, but
in hardcore academic film theory, you get all kinds of bullshit like this. Yeah. Just socialist readings of The Bride of Frankenstein and all kinds of just every little interpretation you could possibly make of just them telling a story.
The nihilism of Bambi.
I always tell everybody that thanks to doing theater as my college degree, we worked a lot with film and theater. I can pick apart any play, song, movie, what have you, and just make the craziest meaning without knowing anything about the author. And I always thought it was so funny because we would sit in class and we'd be like, what do you think this meant? Absolutely. And the professor would just be like, yes, you're right. I'm like, how do you know? He's been dead for 100 years. Like, when we would read plays or whatever, it's like, did you ask him? Did he say that that's what he meant? And I always thought it was so funny because I was just bullshitting.
I heard this argument once about, I forget which Hitchcock film it was, but one of Hitchcock's big films, but it was really about anti-Catholicism.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
Because there's a scene where there's like a cross up against a wall that's supposedly hugely significant. And then they asked someone on the production, there's like,
it's not
there
Vertigo.
was it's not Vertigo, yeah.
No.
It was one of his later ones. But
because I'm trying to picture which one.
What happened was there was like a logo or something in the frame that they needed to cover up with something.
Yeah.
And they had this cross, so they're like, just put this here.
Because I've definitely seen it freeze framed and people pointing it out and circling it. I can't remember which one it was from. That's gonna drive me crazy.
Yeah, and that's just as a filmmaker, when you're on set, the idea that the director controls every little detail and it means everything.
Collaborative.
Yeah,
it's like, yes, I made the shadow do that. Sometimes, sure.
Sometimes, yes.
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
And then sometimes they're just trying to cover their ass. Why is this image? Why is this object in this frame?
Red
and it's
tape?
Because it's blocking the light that's behind it. That's why it's there.
Yeah.
We had something else planned, but didn't work. The truck didn't show up with that piece of equipment, so we had to cover it somehow, and that's why that's there. And that happens.
Or we forgot last minute that we can't show this logo, so we put a little piece of tape on the.
We thought we had a Skittles product placement, and then we lost it. So now we have to cover this Skittles poster.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean.
Yeah, and then people will put any kind of meaning in there that they want, but yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a hell of a supplemental.
And because just to not drop this thread, the Snuff film that kid was in, Hunter S. Thompson directed it.
Just to end this on a happy note.
Yeah.
But I think you need to get this episode out, and then if any of us die in the next few days...
No, don't you put that on us. Illuminati. Yeah. Ooh.
I mean,
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having me. Sorry about my sinuses today.
No, you're fine. No. I think everybody's dealing with it.
Thank you for coming back after the last episode. We didn't chase you off permanently.
All right. Thank you so much, and keep the campfire burning.
Bye.